Chapter 76. We will know about this eventually, but the most important thing now is to stop Snape. Harry still insisted on doubting the old bat. He opened the next door, and several people entered the penultimate level of Xiong Das Hung Pass. Professor Snape's level. As soon as a few people arrived at the table in the level, a flame rose up behind them and sealed the door. The flame is an unusual purple color. At the same time, black flames burst out from the door leading to the front. Soon the group found themselves trapped in the middle of the room. After carefully observing the room, they confirmed that there was nothing scary here, only a table with 7 bottles of different shapes arranged on it. The 10 volumes of parchment next to the bottles were filled with puzzles for the final level. Hermione picked up the parchment and read it aloud. Danger is in front of you, safety is behind you. There are 2 of us who can help you. 3, 4, 3. Drink them, 1 will lead you forward, the other will send you back to where you came from. 2 contained nettle wine. 3 are killers, waiting in line. Take your pick, unless you want to be stuck here forever. We also provide 4 clues to help you choose. First, no matter how cunningly poisons hide, they are actually on the left side of nettle wine. Second, the contents of the bottles at the left and right ends are not comprehensive. If you want to move forward, they will not be useful to you. Third, you will notice that the bottles vary in size. Death is not hidden among giants and dwarfs. Fourth, the second on the left and the second on the right, although they look different, they taste the same. The bottles on the table are roughly arranged like this. 0 million, readers can also guess. Harry still felt confused after reading it, and Ronald was even more confused. But Hermione blurted out, isn't this just a logical reasoning question? Levin also nodded, I have already guessed the answer. Well, it seems that puzzles are nothing to you Ravenclaws. Harry said solemnly. But Levin shook his head, we go back to the lounge and solve puzzles every day, but that is completely different from the puzzles in this level. Ravenclaw's puzzles are closer to brain teasers and philosophical questions, and this question relies on logic. You can get an accurate answer by reasoning. I dare say that even Ravenclaw's wizards may not be able to solve this kind of problem. At this point, wizards who have received Muggle education are better at it. We learned relevant knowledge in elementary school, didn't we? Really? Ronald was surprised. Harry, this is still taught in Muggle primary schools. I don't know either. Harry was so anxious that he almost cried. He remembered that Dolly bullied him, but he didn't remember that he had ever learned this thing. Levin and Hermione looked at each other. Are you coming or am I? Hermione asked. You come on. Levin said, it's time for the little witch to make a splash. It's up to me, Hermione said excitedly. She came to the table, faced a row of potions, and started talking. Since the largest and smallest bottles are not poison, and the second and sixth bottles are the same, it can be seen that the second, third, and sixth bottles are not poison, and there is only one antidote, and the only medicine that is not poison is left add nettle wine, so it can be seen that the second and sixth are nettle wine. The poison is on the left side of the nettle wine, so the first, fourth, and fifth are poisons. Neither the left nor right end can move forward and the first is poison, so the seventh can only be the medicine that goes back, and the third must be the last one. Medicine for moving forward. The analysis was reasonable and reasonable. Harry nodded repeatedly after hearing this. Even Ronald felt itchy on the top of his head, as if he had a longer brain. So, Harry, you went to a different primary school than them, right? Ronald asked expectantly. No, Harry shook his head. Levin and I went to the same elementary school. The gap between humans is greater than that between humans and dogs. Harry didn't want to dwell on things from elementary school. He picked up the first bottle. It was the dwarf in the puzzle. This potion is only enough for one person to drink. 4 of you, look at me and I look at you. Without thinking much, Harry grabbed the bottle. People say I am the boy who was lucky enough to survive. Now it's time for me to face him. Having made a life and death decision in such a short period of time, Harry was indeed a courageous Gryffindor. But Levin himself had no intention of drinking it. He had just seen it, and the flame was not a powerful fire. It was impossible for Snape to use that terrifying thing against the little wizard. So he was fully capable of passing through it. Ahem, my suggestion is this, Levin coughed dryly, attracting everyone's attention, and then said, Harry drank the advancement potion, and went in alone. I stayed and looked for an opportunity to use magic to break the flames. Ronald and Hermione, drink the retreat potion and go back quickly to inform the professors. Hermione and Ronald looked at each other and finally nodded. That's all it can do. You two, be careful. So, Levin and Harry came to the black flames. Harry, you have to remember what I say before you go in. What you see when you go in this trip may not be Snape. At least I never think he is the mastermind behind the scenes. You have to be mentally prepared for this. In addition, you don't have to think about it. Try to defeat the opponent with your own strength. There are me and the professors outside. Finally, I wish you good luck. Harry took a deep breath, said goodbye to everyone, and drank the potion in one gulp. An ice-like feeling suddenly penetrated his whole body. While the effect of the potion was still in effect, he walked straight into the black flames. Hermione and Ronald also drank the 7th potion, passed through the purple flames, and returned to the previous level. Levin stood next to the black fire, recalling the relevant spells he knew. Fireproof Halo, resist energy damage, fire, elemental shield, fire. After giving himself 3 kinds of fire resistance spells, Levin still felt a burning sensation after getting close to the black fire. As expected of Snape. Sure enough, with his level, it was still too young to forcefully challenge the design of this master of black magic. But what if that's the case? With the thought, Levin released the spell he learned through Druid Inheritance, original form. The next moment, his whole person transformed into a fire element. Since I am not immune to fire, 4.6, then I will become a part of the fire. What can you do to me? After that, he stepped into the black fire again. This time, his attempt was successful. The hot flames couldn't hurt him at all, he easily entered the final level of Hogwarts Courage and Wisdom Challenge. As soon as he traveled through time, Levin immediately cancelled the transformation and applied invisibility to himself. At this time, he was still in the doorway, and neither of the two people confronting him in the room saw him. That was good, he wasn't prepared to expose himself in front of Voldemort if he didn't have to. He hid behind the corner wall and secretly observed the confrontation between the two. Chapter 77. At this time, Harry had obtained the Philosopher's Stone from the Mirror of East. Voldemort guessed this and asked to speak to Harry in person. Quirrell took off the turban on his head, revealing a head with two faces. Where the back of Quirrell's head should have been, there was a face. The face was as white as chalk, with glowing red eyes, and underneath were two slender nostrils like snakes. Levin remembers that the ancient Roman god Janus was sometimes called Janus Quirinus. Janus was the god of doors and beginnings and was depicted as having two faces, front and back. Just corresponds to the embarrassing road at this time. When Rowling names her characters, she adds similar metaphors to them. But now he has really traveled to the world of Harry Potter, which means that in the magical world, a person's name does have magic power. Names sometimes really affect destiny. On Voldemort's side, Harry started to talk a lot and tried to let Harry break through his defense through verbal evasion. But he failed in the end and had no choice but to take action in anger. Harry tried to escape. He rushed towards the flame door, but was immediately grabbed by Professor Quirrell's wrist. Both men fell to the ground. Suddenly, the scar on Harry's forehead started to hurt terribly. But Quirrell also let out a wail. The pain in his hands that touched Harry's skin was excruciating, as if he were holding a hot iron. Just when he wanted to let go, a figure appeared from behind the stone wall at the corner. There was not even a moment of mourning for Harry's capture. The one who rushed to the battlefield immediately was Gryffindor Masked Man Adhesion 13 Techniques. With a flick of the silhouette's wand, Quirrell found that his hands were tightly stuck to the wrists of the boy who lived. Who is this NM so wicked? Quirrell cursed internally. Looking up, he saw a little wizard wearing a Gryffindor school uniform, with a scarf covering his face completely, leaving only a pair of eyes exposed. Damn those who hide their heads and show their tails. He unexpectedly attacked me, an old senior. But the priority is to get rid of the pain. He had to endure the excruciating pain while trying his best to separate from Harry's wrist. But no matter how hard he tried, how he shook his hands, or even dragged Harry 7 or 8 meters away, he could not complete the task. The two of them seemed to be lovers till death. There were no edges in the mountains, heaven and earth were in harmony, so they dared to fight with you. Coupled with the screaming duet of the older and the younger, plus Voldemort's roaring rap, the whole room became as miserable as a morning hall. Levin, who was watching this scene, was almost moved to tears. If he wasn't the instigator. Quirrell missed his wand very much at this time. As long as he had a free hand to reach the wand, there were 9 ways he could get his hand off Harry's wrist. But he transformed with his hands. This made him very regretful for his previous poor hands. As long as he used one less hand, he would not. It's a pity that he didn't have the chance to regret it, because he will never have a chance again. Harry's head hurt just because of the scar on his head when he touched him. But he was really suffering the backlash from Harry's protective magic. When he got to the back, he was covered in blisters and white smoke, and finally began to melt. Before his head completely melted, a black smoke-like thing floated out, and then flew towards the door. Without Voldemort's possession, Quirrell no longer suffers the backlash from the guardian magic. But now he has almost turned into a puddle of protein solution. Does it make any difference whether it reacts or not? A simple spell can change everything. This is the art of magic. Levin changed his costume back to the image of Ravenclaw, then came to Harry and helped the boy who had a splitting headache up. Your condition is very bad. Do you need to take some medicine? Levin dug out bits and pieces from his bag, potion demulcent, and muggle aspirin. Choose one. Harry didn't want to choose at all. He took the medicine away from Levin's hand with the hand covering his head, and then stuffed it into his mouth. Well, I hope it will be better if the potion is combined with muggle medicine. It seemed that he was right. After taking the medicine, Harry's headache was relieved a lot. Just listen to him complaining in a porcelain voice. What kind of unlucky magic did you use, Levin? My head hurts like hell. But at least you saved your life, right? Levin patted his shoulder comfortingly. What works well is good magic. And you see, the culprit of this matter, Quirrell, is dead, and the Dark Lord has escaped. The boy who lived once again defeated the Dark Lord with his own hands, specifically, with his wrists, except for the headache. For a few minutes, everything was perfect, wasn't it? This is not a matter of a few minutes of headache. Harry complained loudly, then forced a smile. You're right, we defeated the Dark Lord and protected the Sorcerer's Stone. I can't believe we actually did it. Yes, the hero finally defeated the big devil after going through many hardships. Unfortunately this is only the first stage. Levin said something he didn't understand, and suddenly said, speaking of which, I've been hearing you talk about protecting the Philosopher's Stone, but I haven't seen a real Philosopher's Stone with my own eyes. Harry, can I touch your Philosopher's Stone? Levin would make this request, of course, not randomly, he was prepared. From Dumbledore's performance in the original work, he had reason to believe that the old bee was well aware of Harry Potter's participation in the Battle of Wisdom and Courage. Even in the final showdown between Harry and Professor Quirrell, he had taken safety measures in advance. From this logic, Levin has reason to believe that Dumbledore is secretly observing them from somewhere at this time, analyzing their character, and making plans in advance for the future savior training plan. Knowing all this, Levin still planned to borrow the Philosopher's Stone to take a look. After all, he didn't intend to risk robbery like Voldemort. For such a studious kid, it's normal for him to be interested in the Philosopher's Stone. As for why you have to see the Philosopher's Stone? After this semester, Levin has made some judgments about the mechanism of comprehension. For example, it is easy to have an epiphany when you have a strong desire. For example, it is easy to gain enlightenment when exposed to related magic. For another example, when you come into contact with powerful magic items and original rules, it is easiest to gain understanding, and this kind of understanding is also the most precious. The most typical one is to understand the true druid profession through the inheritance of druidism. The Philosopher's Stone, as the ultimate product of alchemy, also has this potential. That's why he made this request. Although he knew that the Philosopher's Stone was precious, Harry still trusted Levin, his longtime friend. What's more, this friend just saved his life, although the price was a long time of head pain. So he took out the magic stone from his pocket and handed it to Levin. Levin took the Philosopher's Stone, put it in his hand, and looked at it carefully. It is a red, translucent polyhedral stone. From the appearance alone, it looks like a large ruby. But in terms of value, it is countless times more precious than a ruby, a euro of the same size. You touched the ultimate product of alchemy, the Philosopher's Stone, and you realized the ultimate secret of alchemy. You obtained alchemy specialization and you learned the expertise creating Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone is what the Philosopher's Stone is called in other worlds, and there is not much difference between the two. Making the Philosopher's Stone, you have learned how to make the Philosopher's Stone. Once a month, you can spend a certain amount of blood and magic power to create a Philosopher's Stone. This is the only way to create a Philosopher's Stone. No new Philosopher's Stone can be created before the Philosopher's Stone is consumed. The Philosopher's Stone can create the elixir of life. In addition to extending lifespan, the elixir of rejuvenation can completely restore the health of a creature and eradicate all poisons that are affecting it. It can even make people who have just died restore life. In addition, the Philosopher's Stone can turn up to 50 kilograms of steel into 5 kilograms of gold each month. In arcane magic, the Philosopher's Stone also has wonderful uses. If you sacrifice a Philosopher's Stone, a transformation spell can be solidified forever. For example, the 9th level spell Magic 493 Dragon Transformation can turn the caster into a giant red dragon, thereby gaining powerful power. As long as the caster is willing to sacrifice a Philosopher's Stone, he can maintain the form of a red dragon forever. Just by touching the magic stone, he gained such abilities, almost falling into ecstasy. He was actually able to create the Philosopher's Stone himself. At only 12 years old, 1 year later, 1 year older, he naturally does not need the ability of the Philosopher's Stone to extend his life. But having the Philosopher's Stone means that he will not be troubled by money before building the floating city. At the same time, the elixir created by the Philosopher's Stone can also greatly protect the lives of those around him. Among druid spells, spells that can cause the same healing effect must be at least level 7, that is, level LV15 before they can be used. Sure enough, it was right to choose to participate in the Hogwarts challenge. The rewards for this wise and brave challenge are indeed generous enough. Levin suppressed the expression on his face, pretended to look at the Philosopher's Stone again, and threw it to Harry. The casualness with which he threw it away, and the demeanor with no hesitation, made Dumbledore, who was observing secretly, stunned for a moment, sighing in his heart that there are people who treat treasures like dirt. In this way, Levin unknowingly acted coquettishly in front of Dumbledore. Levin, isn't this thing just a stone's throw away? We will have better ones in the future. Harry caught the magic stone thrown by Levin, looked at it and put it in his pocket. I wonder what happened to Ronald and the others? Where are they, Professor? Levin comforted, with a hint of meaning in his tone. Don't worry, this is Hogwarts, and as long as Dumbledore is still there, they will not encounter any danger. After hearing this, old B Duo, who had been observing secretly, felt his face burning. However, he was thick-skinned and acted as if nothing had happened. He silently walked to the door, pretending to have just walked through the fire door, hurried over, and then shouted, "Oh my God, Mr. Potter and Mr. Green, very soon. I'm glad to see you're safe and I hope I'm not too late." Chapter 78. Dumbledore didn't come alone. On his shoulder stood a gorgeous, bright red bird, similar in size to a swan, with a long shining golden tail and long, golden claws. That's his phoenix, Fox. As a magical creature, the phoenix has the ability to apparate and is not affected by Hogwarts' anti-apparition spell. Levin strongly suspects that it was Fox who drove him back after being transferred away from the mountain. Harry has a headache, but I'm fine. Levin took the initiative, it's just that Professor Quirrell. He pointed to the puddle of Quirrell in front of him. Oh my God, poor Professor Quirrell. Even with Dumbledore's psychological quality, Quirrell couldn't help but frown when he saw him like this. How did he become like this? Maybe it's because of me and Harry. Levin said in a weak tone like an ordinary student. I saw Quirrell grabbing Harry's wrist and suddenly becoming very painful. I realized that maybe Harry's skin could hurt Quirrell, just like he did defeat the Dark Lord, so. Speaking of this, his voice became a little weaker, so I used magic to glue his hands to Harry's wrists. Harry covered his head and nodded in agreement. After hearing this, even Dumbledore was speechless. Who would have thought that the famous Dark Lord would actually be defeated by the simplest magic? Harry Potter also has the adhesive curse. Sure enough, the world is full of wonders, and such outrageous things will happen. Dumbledore sighed faintly. Poor Quirrell, he was completely implicated by Tom. With that said, he turned to the two of them and gave them a smile. Sorry, it's my fault for leaving you to face this alone. The owl sent by Miss Granger and I obviously missed it in the air. As soon as I arrived in London, I realized that I should go back to the place I just left. I arrived just in time, and the problem seemed to have been solved by you. As he said that, he looked at Harry's face, and then his face became serious. I have neglected too many things, and now we must send Harry to Pomfrey immediately. Then, he grabbed their wrists with both hands. Don't associate me with Harry this time. Before leaving, he also made a wisecrack and gave Levin his signature wink. Levin felt that maybe he wanted to relieve his non-existent tension. After all, the scene where Quirrell melted was too scary. Then, he said to the phoenix on his shoulder, Fox, take us to Madame Pomfrey. Levin, who was leaning next to Dumbledore, couldn't help but observe Fox. For ordinary people, it is not easy to observe a phoenix at such a close distance. These birds are not only beautiful, powerful, and rare. Their cries can strengthen the courage of those with a pure heart and release the fear of those with a dirty heart. Their tears have strong healing effects and their strength is enough to lift comparisons. They all want big objects themselves. But phoenixes are also quite rare. Few people can see wild phoenixes. As for domesticated phoenixes, apart from Fox, only New Zealand's Motola macaws have a phoenix as their mascot. Levin suddenly thought, why not make the phoenix one of his 6 wilderness forms? It can replace the owl beast that symbolizes wisdom. Levin still hasn't figured out how to get a Munchkin from Otherworld. So, tentatively set the task for next semester, and practice the opportunity to get a fox feather. While Levin was thinking wildly, he suddenly felt that he was surrounded by a warm breath. His whole body felt like he was bathing in the sun and felt extremely comfortable. It is different from the nauseating and dizzy feeling after using ordinary apparition, flow powder, and port Kayat. Before he could recover from this wonderful feeling, they had arrived at Madame Poppy Pomfrey's infirmary. Worthy of being a phoenix, at this time, Levin wanted to get its feathers even more. This comfortable transmission was obviously not comparable to other methods. In the school infirmary, Levin told Madame Pomfrey what happened to Harry, and the kind old woman immediately pulled Harry to the hospital bed for treatment. After a while, the therapist showed a relaxed expression. It's nothing, it's not serious, but he may need to recuperate for a few days. Albus, and Mr. Green, if there is nothing else, please leave first, this child need to rest quietly. After coming out of the school doctor's office, Levin originally planned to say goodbye. But before he could speak, Dumbledore issued a new invitation. Mr. Green, I believe that after such an exciting night, you would be willing to taste some delicious food with me in the principal's office to relax? It just so happens that I was in a hurry just now. There are some things I want to know from you about your adventure. Old B put on a kind face and said with a smile. Sure enough, after deciding to participate in this brave and wise challenge, Levin expected such a situation. If it were an ordinary little wizard like Neville, Seamus, or Steve who mistakenly joined the adventure team, he would definitely not be invited by the principal. But Levin is different. He is a recognized genius. He ranked first in this session and has a dominant position in Ravenclaw. It is normal for Dumbledore to be concerned about such a person joining Harry's adventure team. Levin wasn't going to say no. Nowadays, he is relatively powerful, and he also has hidden thoughts to defend against legilimency, so Dumbledore can't do anything to him. Besides, as a student of Hogwarts, how could he refuse? Except for Harry, there are only a handful of students in the entire school who can go to the principal's office. From the perspective of an ordinary little wizard, it is his honor to go to the principal's office. So Levin nodded in agreement. Actually, Mr. Green, I have been paying attention to you since you entered school. On the way to the principal's office, Dumbledore said casually, you come from a very poor background, but your talent and grades are outstanding. The professors in the school love you very much, and the other children also admire you very much. When he said, Zhao's, here, old B paused. I once taught an outstanding student similar to you. He was also born in a Muggle orphanage. He was also very smart and liked everyone. Unfortunately, I was not mature at the time. Hearing this, Levin's heart tightened. Of course he knew who Dumbledore was talking about. But on the surface, he could only ask out of curiosity, Professor, who is that person? Well, a boy who's as good as you, maybe slightly worse than you? At least you're better at Quidditch than he is. It's a pity that he took the wrong path in the end. Dumbledore's tone seemed to be immersed in memories of the past. Levin did not interrupt him and followed him quietly. After going up the stairs, they walked to the door of the principal's office together. Toffee finger cakes. Dumbledore read the correct secret word, and the stone sculpture at the door immediately rotated, revealing the escalator leading to the headmaster's office. Chapter 79. The two walked into the headmaster's office, and Dumbledore asked Levin to sit in front of a huge table. Levin noticed that the worn sorting hat was placed on the shelf nearby. In front of the shelf is a perch, with Professor Dumbledore's pet Phoenix already standing on it. Realizing that Levin was looking at him, Phoenix also glanced at him gently and shook its gorgeous tail fin as a greeting. The wall opposite is covered with portraits of former principals. Perhaps because it was late at night, these principals were fast asleep. But Levin keenly discovered that these were all fake. These old principals secretly opened their eyes a little and looked at themselves curiously. Dumbledore waved his hand, and the iced pumpkin juice was served in front of the two of them. Cakes, candies and other snacks were also divided into 2 portions and placed in front of the two of them respectively. Please you sit slowly, child. Dumbledore greeted warmly. After secretly verifying that there was no veritasirum or any other messy stuff inside, Levin nodded gently, took a bite of the cheesecake, and drank another sip of pumpkin juice. He suddenly felt relaxed and happy. If the old bee in front of him hadn't been staring at him. Seeing Levin finish a piece of cake, Dumbledore smiled and said, "So, as I just said, would you like to talk about what happened tonight, Levin? I need more specific details, so I can you tell others, you know, the end of the term is coming soon." "Oh, of course, no problem." Principal Levin had long expected that there would be such a conversation, so naturally there would be no unspeakable operations. So he simply started from the small investigation of Harry and others this semester, focusing on Harry's initiative to ask for help, and then the process of Xiong's great breakthrough. The performance and role of Hermione and others in this incident were also briefly discussed. He read it again, and how he finally saw the confrontation between Harry and Voldemort, and how he used a mere spell to trick Voldemort to death. He did not shy away from some of his extraordinary operations in the process, such as making all keys fall, 587 using summons to replace chess pieces, etc. But he didn't take the initiative to mention what magic he used to achieve the effect. "Ah, I must say, you have both courage and wisdom, kid." After Levin finished speaking, Dumbledore couldn't help but sigh, "You are a well-deserved Ravenclaw. Of course, maybe it was also appropriate for the Sorting Hat to assign you to Gryffindor. In short, thank you, child. I have asked you too many questions today. But I think, you also have a lot of questions you want to ask me, right? Have a question for Dumbledore?" Upon hearing this, Levin immediately understood the other party's intention. This is not just for answering questions. Understanding a person is not only about asking questions, but also about answering them. Asking questions to the other party is of course the most direct method, but this method is prone to subconscious vigilance by the other party, thus obtaining answers that are contrary to their wishes. But answering the other party's questions is different. Because psychologically, asking questions means taking the initiative, and this control of the initiative will prompt the other party to put down their guard. In this way, by answering questions, Dumbledore can easily learn what the other person cares about most, and thus understand the other person's true personality traits. As expected of an old bee, he does things in the same way. If he was really an ordinary little wizard, he would have been deceived into not wanting it. Therefore, even though Levin, as a time traveler, knows a lot about the inside story of the whole thing, he still has to ask some questions that he already knew. "Professor, although I defeated the Dark Lord with the adhesive curse, I still want to know why Professor Quirrell became like this after meeting Harry. I think a smart kid like you must have some guesses, right?" Dumbledore winked at him and then said, "Because Professor Quirrell has 2 souls, and the one who really caused this effect was actually the Dark Lord. Although I didn't witness your battle with my own eyes, I know some things. In fact, the Dark Lord is very knowledgeable about souls. But this kind of business is very dangerous. It was precisely because of this curse that Harry was able to survive the disaster. Even though you were born as a Muggle, you should have heard about that incident in the past year. In fact, this curse is still in effect. The Dark Lord still cannot touch Harry, even if he is not relying on his own body. The unfortunate Quirrell has become his master's scapegoat." Levin nodded. He wasn't sure when Old B discovered the Horcrux, but no matter what, he had to do a little research on the magic of the soul, otherwise it wouldn't be a problem to keep using the Horcrux. He still owed Helena. Ravenclaw has a crown. It just so happens that old liar Lockhart will be coming to Hogwarts next semester. Entering the Forbidden Book area, the way to understand soul magic may lie with him. Next, Levin asked a few more questions he knew, for example, who designed the levels in Xiong Dashan. Finally, he asked, "Principal, do you feel that Professor Quirrell, as a subordinate of the Dark Lord, has behaved a little abnormally this semester?" After that, he recounted the analysis he had made to Harry and the others in the Trolls' room when he broke through the level. As soon as this statement came out, the entire principal's office fell into silence for a period of time. After a long time, Professor Dumbledore said regretfully, "Maybe, your guess is right. After he embarked on this wrong path, he probably had regrets and tried to use some exaggerated words. The performance attracted our attention. Yes, how could a wizard who can use giant monsters as a level be frightened and fainted by giant monsters? Unfortunately, we were too careless at the time and did not perceive the meaning. I don't think I can't notice it, but I don't want to notice it." A conspiracy theory flashed through Levin's mind. Perhaps after Quirrell brought the Dark Lord into Hogwarts, Dumbledore had given up on him and used him as a sacrifice to cultivate a savior. Of course, he himself didn't believe in this possibility. From his personal point of view, Dumbledore would not do this. Old B may be too stubborn, and may have shortcomings such as believing too much in prophecies, but he is indeed a good person. Given his character, if Quirrell really surrenders, he will most likely take action to save him. Of course, this doesn't mean that Dumbledore doesn't have a cold side. In fact, BDCH, he was quite cold towards Harry. Looking at his entire plan, we can see that Dumbledore probably realized very early on that there was some kind of connection between Harry Potter and the Dark Lord. Combined with his training of Harry, we can draw a terrible conclusion. All Dumbledore's training of Harry Potter has only one ultimate goal, that is to send him to the Dark Lord, and then eat him with an avatar. Only in this way will Voldemort be truly killed. As for Harry's life or death during this process, it depends on God's will. From this perspective, Dumbledore is indeed very cold. If Snape found out that he risked his own life to protect Lily's child, and his ultimate goal was to take a killing curse in front of the Dark Lord, then he would probably cast a death curse on Dumbledore first. Oh, it turns out he already did that in the original work, so that's okay. In short, Dumbledore, a complete idealist, can be quite scary sometimes. For his ideal, since he can use his life as a pawn, of course, he wouldn't mind using other people's lives as pawns. Thinking of this, Levin couldn't help but feel a little sorry for Harry's future fate. Quirrell, in my opinion, is a gifted but weak boy. In his school career, he may have been teased a lot because of his timidity and nervousness. He is dissatisfied with himself and wants to prove himself, and those who feel that he is insignificant. Even like a ridiculous person, Quirrell has an underlying desire to make the world look at him with admiration. But it is precisely because of this that I hired him as the defense against the dark arts professor. Dumbledore said slowly in a self-reproaching tone, it's a pity. If he hadn't met the Dark Lord, he might have become a competent professor. Finally, in memory of Quirrell, Dumbledore ended the conversation, thank you Mr. Green for being willing to satisfy the curiosity of an old man like me in the middle of the night. I enjoyed today's conversation, but it's time to go to bed. I believe you can avoid Filch and return to the dormitory. Shortly after Levin left, in the headmaster's office, Dumbledore was writing portraits of previous headmasters and exchanging opinions with each other. He is indeed a genius, mature, smart, and a little ambitious. Maybe besides Ravenclaw and Gryffindor, he is also suitable for Slytherin? But he is indeed a kind child, and I like him very much, said the portrait of Delis Derwent. In addition to being the principal, she was also a famous healer at St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies, and her portrait hangs not only in the principal's office, but also on the wall of the waiting room of St. Mungo's Hospital. He actually didn't mention the Philosopher's Stone at all. I probably couldn't help it when I was alive. Armando Dippett's portrait said. He was Dumbledore's former headmaster, and Voldemort's rise was during his tenure. But other portraits thought he was joking because he was over 30 years old when he became principal. I think this just proves that there is something wrong with him. Who cannot be tempted by the Sorcerer's Stone unless he already has one, said the portrait of Phineas Nigellus Black, not knowing that he had no intention of doing so. The truth was revealed. He is the elder of the Sirius family and the most unpopular principal in the history of Hogwarts. He is an out-and-out pureblood who is full of malice towards muggle-born wizards like Levin. By the way, the heir to ancient magic, whose name I really cannot tell, transferred to Hogwarts during his tenure. You once said that that person is the smartest and most talented student you have ever seen. Now there is a guy smarter than him. With his deep thinking, I have no doubts about his future development with a grain of salt. Because of Levin's arrival, the portraits in the principal's office fell into a fierce debate. Most of the principal's portraits clearly expressed their love for him, but some principals were still skeptical. Finally, Dumbledore concluded, for now, Mr. Levin Green is a good boy. He does have a smart mind, strong talents, and ambition for certain things. I think this is mainly reflected in the pursuit of knowledge in this regard, he for the real Ravenclaw, no doubt. And the most important thing is that he has a kind heart. He is willing to help Harry, and he can also detect the remaining kindness in Quirrell's heart. This is something that even I have not been able to do. As of now, he is not will become the next Dark Lord. Chapter 80. When Levin came to the auditorium the next morning, he was surprised to find that in addition to the Ravenclaws, Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, and even the little wizards of Slytherin looked at him curiously, as if he was the first person to come here. Same as Potter at school. It looks like word has spread about their adventure last night. When he sat at the dining table, he was surprised to find that senior sister Cyrilla and Hermione came over at the same time. Steve on the side consciously sat down 2 empty seats away. You kid, don't take me with you if you have any adventures. Cyrilla sat next to him familiarly, patted his shoulder hard, and said dissatisfied, I thought we were good friends. Sorry, if it was a bank party, I would definitely call you. Levin paused and forcefully looked away from the pair of white thighs that were close to him. Just when he was about to say something, Hermione sat down on the other side of him and answered for him, Sorry, Miss Leanne, Mr. Green only joined the adventure at our invitation. I didn't expect that Miss Leanne would also like us. Interested in the little adventure, it was our mistake not to invite Miss Leanne. Miss Granger's tone was very polite, but Levin could hear a hint of gunpowder in it. Hermione, she. Levin was just thinking about what Miss Know-It-All should say when he was interrupted by Cyrilla again. What you just said was, an invitation. But how did I hear that the actual situation should be closer to asking for help when you are aware of your own shortcomings? Cyrilla snorted with weird emphasis, it is indeed Gryffindor. He is nothing but reckless. It is up to us Ravenclaw to take action at the critical moment. You. Hermione said anxiously when the other party poked at her, then Levin is willing to take action because he is our friend, right, Levin? Friends. Cyrilla glanced at her sideways and said calmly, it's better to have fewer friends like this that will only cause trouble to others, aren't you right? For a moment, both girls' eyes were focused on Levin, let him feel the pressure increase sharply, the eaglets next to me have already collectively sat 4 seats away. But Levin is indeed Levin, and he just understood what happened just as soon as his mind changed. It seemed that Cyrilla was joking with Levin, which made Hermione a little dissatisfied. She looked for trouble and hinted, this risky project is led by them and has nothing to do with you, an outsider. Cyrilla retorted, although you proposed the adventure, Levin is the real power. Besides, she and Levin are both Ravenclaws, and you are a Gryffindor. It is obvious which one is closer and which one is further away. Of course Hermione was dissatisfied, the difference between the houses didn't matter, we were all good friends. Cyrilla said, you are only looking for trouble and are bad friends. I am a good friend. Looking at the whole article, the main thing is to argue about who has a good relationship with Levin. All in all, it is just 2 words, fighting for favor. Since it is a competition for favor, this is easy to handle. While Levin increased the input of his spiritual power into charming humans, he put on his signature gentle smile and said in a letter, why is the smell of gunpowder so strong so early in the morning? You two are my good friends. Seeing you arguing with each other makes me feel very uncomfortable. As he spoke, he showed a sad expression, it's all my fault for not introducing each other to you properly. Otherwise, you wouldn't have such a big misunderstanding. It's not your fault, she and I have no misunderstanding. It's not your fault, Levin, I just think she's a little. The two of them defended in unison, but Levin ignored their words and said to himself, maybe you guys haven't crossed paths in the past, so that's why you quarreled like this, but it doesn't matter, just get to know each other. As he said that, he looked at Hermione, Hermione, this is my senior sister Cyrilla Lyanne. You must recognize her from the Quidditch field. Not only is she my partner in the Quidditch field, he is also my best friend in Ravenclaw, and he always takes good care of me. After saying that, he looked at Cyrilla. Under his gentle gaze, Cyrilla shrugged helplessly and waved to Hermione, hi, I'm Cyrilla Lyanne, you can call me by my name, or just call me Ciri. Then, Levin introduced Hermione, Miss Hermione Granger and I met on the train when school started. Although she joined Gryffindor, she also has the intelligence and sharpness of Ravenclaw, which suits my taste very well. Miss Granger is not only my friend is also a study partner, and I have benefited a lot from studying with her. This time, Hermione also said obediently, hello, senior sister Cyrilla, just call me Hermione. Faced with Levin's enthusiastic introduction, both of them chose to follow him. When they thought that their actions would make this handsome face look sad, they themselves couldn't help but feel sad. Isn't this great? Levin clapped his hands happily, both of you are my important friends in Hogwarts, my beloved relatives and friends. It is the existence of you two that makes my campus life colorful. If there is a conflict between you, then I will be very worried. I can't even go to school. So, you two, don't let me worry, okay? Being praised by Levin as an important friend, loved relative and friend, and colorful, both Hermione and Sirius blushed and their hearts beat. Then they heard him say he was worried, and the two of them immediately hurriedly reassured, don't worry, Levin, I won't quarrel with my senior sister again. You know, I'm not that kind of willful girl. After that, the two of them still pretended to chat with each other, chuckled together, and left after a while. After coming here for about 5 minutes and confirming that neither of them responded, roommate Steve and Roger from the team carefully sat back down in their seats. As soon as he sat down, Steve said with fear, the scene just now was so scary. Levin, I almost thought they would take action on the spot. Of course they won't take action. Levin calmly poured himself another glass of milk. You are right, after all, I have you. Before Steve could finish speaking, Levin continued, Hermione has already learned basic dueling magic. She will probably use the disarming spell directly, because this spell is the fastest to cast. As for Cyrilla, she likes to use her hands when fighting. But before using her fists, she will probably prepare burning hands, electric claw or something. After listening to his words, Steve became even more frightened, so, they really might fight. As long as I'm here, they can't fight, and they won't take action in front of me. Levin took a sip of milk and said very calmly. Then you're not here. Roger suddenly asked in a low voice. Why are they fighting when I'm not here? Levin glanced at him, as if he had asked a stupid question. Please give me flower sa euro this. With great difficulty, he finally figured out cai wens luo die. So, you know they were fighting because of you. Joke. Levin put down the cup and sneered, if I didn't know this, then I wouldn't be able to let them quarrel because of me. So you know everything. Roger's voice became even quieter, no wonder what you just said to them sounded like green tea to me. Tisk, 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 you still don't understand. Levin shook his finger and mentioned his roommate, I am a highly charismatic character, what's wrong with me? If I don't have a little tea, my charm will be in vain. For some words, don't care whether it is green tea or not, just say whether it is useful or not. It's useful, of course it's useful. After hearing these remarks, the two of them suddenly realized. Suddenly, Roger grabbed Levin's sleeve and said enthusiastically, to tell you the truth, brother, I have had a hard time. You can make 2 such good friends in the 1st grade, but I am already in the 4th grade and I don't have one. Close girl. 0 But since my brother has such a good method, why don't you share it with everyone? I don't expect to make 2 good friends like you, just one will do. Me too. Steve also joined in the fun, although he, a first-year student, didn't think there was anything special about having a few more female friends, he just followed the example of the big guys. I want to learn skills, it's very simple. Levin pushed the cup, and Roger immediately refilled the milk for him. First of all, you must have a certain skill. Without core strengths, it will be difficult to attract the opposite S**x. Yet. Roger nodded repeatedly. Indeed, for a top student like Levin who has all-round development of moral, intellectual, physical, artistic, and physical skills, it's no wonder that so many senior students covet him. Secondly, you have to be able to talk. Levin took a sip of milk and continued, women tend to get emotional, so it is necessary to maintain a good mood through certain speaking skills, especially when facing multiple girls. What do you think? This is a routine, it's green tea, but I call it efficient. Levin is right. Roger continued to nod. The scene where he made the dispute between the two women disappear was the best example. Last and most important. Once you have mastered this key point, it doesn't matter if you haven't completed the above 2 items. Levin paused, and his serious look made Roger, Steve, and other nearby boys who came up involuntarily pay attention. Levin looked around and then said slowly. That is to have a face as handsome as mine. As long as you do this, no matter what you do, they will forgive you. Cut. Hateful. Arrogant Yangu. After hearing this, the little wizards who were listening to the lecture dispersed in a hurry. Do you hear what people say? Although we admit that what you said makes sense and is in line with the facts, but this has no guiding significance for us. If we were all as handsome as you, no, even if we were half as handsome as you, we wouldn't come here to listen to your lectures. Looking at the students leaving without any pressure from schoolwork, laughing and playing, Levin smiled, stood up and left the auditorium. There are not many days left until the end of the semester. Chapter 81. Among the 3 companions who participated in the Xiong challenge, Harry has been lying in the school doctor's office, and Hermione has already seen them. Out of a sense of responsibility, Levin then went to see Ronald. Hermione took Levin to find him in the castle courtyard. At this time, Ronald's face was red, at least much redder than his hair. He was surrounded by a group of little wizards, dancing and bragging. We learned that someone had ulterior motives and was plotting against the Philosopher's Stone hidden in the castle by the principal, and the principal happened not to be at school. Of course we cannot sit idly by in such an emergency. Actually, we also thought about it at the time and struggled for a long time. The dangers we will face later are even scary when we think about it now. Levin was speechless for a while. You were very proactive when you came to see me. The first level we have to face is the extremely dangerous Greek 3-headed dog. You must know that in Muggle mythology, it is the guardian of the gate of the underworld. Didn't I just tell you this myth last night? In order to pass its guard, we went through a fierce fight, and finally found its weakness and successfully defeated it. Looking back now, I can still smell the stench. Levin shook his head. It's hard for you to make up the story of me using phantom sound technique so wonderfully. The second level is the endless devil's net planted by Professor Sprout. Each of them is thicker than my waist and wraps around you like countless pythons. My neck was almost strangled at that time. Levin was stunned. Are you sure you are not talking about your ankle? The third level is Professor Flitwick's flying key. We have to find the correct one among thousands of keys to open the door. We risk being poked into a sieve by the key, fighting left and right. I don't know how many injuries I suffered, but I finally found the one who opened the door. Levin, I remember those keys were not even 1,000, but it was difficult for you to multiply them 100 times with just one mouthful. He finally knew why so many people were looking at him this morning. It turns out it's you, the big mouth, who is spreading rumors here. Ronald was bragging about last night's achievements, boasting that the 4 of them were incomparable in heaven and earth. He punched Dumbledore and kicked Grindelwald. Voldemort even shouted master when he saw them, and even he himself became awesome. Levin didn't listen for long before he was so embarrassed that he wanted to stand up and drag him away from the crowd. But he can't do that, as one of the targets of Ronald's bragging, whenever he dares to show up, it will only make the situation more chaotic. At this moment, a hero finally fulfilled his wish for him. Also, our genius brother of the Weasley family passed Professor McGonagall's giant chessboard array. The Weasley twin brothers pushed through the crowd, one on each side, and took Ronald's arms. Ronald, you've been talking all morning, that's enough. Do you know where Harry is? Ronald habitually turned his head to look next to him, and found that the person sitting there was not Harry, but Lavender Brown, who was fascinated by his bragging. Only then did he realize what was wrong this morning, and he immediately became anxious. I know you're in a hurry, but don't worry yet, tell us quickly who was last with Harry yesterday. The twins sang in harmony. This, the last person who was with Harry yesterday was Levin. Yes, go to the West Tower to ask for Levin Buddha. Ronald said quickly. Then he saw Levin and Hermione waving to him at the courtyard door. So they immediately squeezed through the crowd. Hi, Levin, good morning. Do you know where Harry went, and what did you last see in the room? Ronald's loud voice immediately attracted people's attention, and many students who had never heard of Shang gathered around him. Faced with these pairs of eyes looking forward to gossip, Levin could only introduce the follow-up in a few words. When he heard that Harry had entered the infirmary, he immediately lost the patience to stay here and ran to the school infirmary. Hermione tugged on Levin's sleeve, and he understood immediately. After hurriedly speaking, he took Hermione to the school doctor's office. Seeing Harry lying pale and lifeless on the hospital bed, Ronald was very worried and kept asking Madame Pomfrey, is Harry okay? When will Harry wake up? That's enough. This is the 30th time you've asked me the same question. So, of course, their end was that Madame Pomfrey dared to leave the school infirmary and Levin and Hermione were also unlucky. However, they were relieved to confirm with their own eyes that Harry was fine. In the next few days, the Quidditch match ushered in the final game, Ravenclaw vs Gryffindor. With Levin and Cyrilla, Ravenclaw is already a supermodel. and Harry was sent to the school doctor's office. Gryffindor made matters worse and was directly killed by Ravenclaw. Ravenclaw continued the big score wins from the previous 2 games. On the last night of the semester, when Levin walked into the auditorium, he was satisfied to see that the auditorium was decorated with blue and bronze colors representing Ravenclaw to celebrate them breaking Slytherin's monopoly and winning the Academy Cup. A huge banner with a Ravenclaw eagle hanging on the wall behind the guest of honor seat. When passing by Slytherin, Levin noticed that the snakes were glaring at him. This is normal, Ravenclaw's victory ruined Slytherin's dream of winning the House Cup for the 7th consecutive year. And he is the culprit, whether it's in the classroom or at Quidditch. Levin scores huge points for Ravenclaw, as can be expected, they will have to endure this situation every semester in the future. Levin quickly came to his accustomed seat on the long table. Nowadays, no one will occupy it at all, even if he is not here, the little eagles will leave the seat vacant, such was their respect for Levin. The dinner started soon, and Harry also finished his recuperation and came to the auditorium. When Professor Dumbledore announced the results of each house, the Ravenclaw dining table erupted into thunderous cheers and hands slapping the table. Ravenclaw's original score was already in the lead. Counting the extra points from the Quidditch Cup, Ravenclaw was nearly 400 points ahead of the second-place team. Yes, good performance. Dumbledore said, however, the recent events must also be taken into account. The auditorium became very quiet, and Ravenclaw's excitement subsided somewhat. Levin showed a smile as if he was watching a show and was not afraid of trouble. He wanted to see if Dumbledore would be so shameless as to give more than 200 bonus points to each team member who bravely passed the level. If it were true, then his plan to force Gryffindor would be ruined, and the little wizards would have to spray him to death. In fact, Levin thinks this extra point is very unfair. On the one hand, Dumbledore himself made a rule that he was not allowed to go to the corridor on the 4th floor. On the other hand, he secretly pushed Harry to take the initiative to violate school rules and use this as a test. That's all. In the end, he rewarded this behavior with extra points. So those little wizards who followed the rules became clowns. If it were Levin, he would never do this, especially when the college cup scores are directly related to the penalties imposed by school regulations. There are so many ways to reward a child, why do you have to use extra points? Dumbledore cleared his throat. There are still some final points to be distributed. Let me see. That's right, so next, he added 50 points to Hermione and Ronald, 60 points to Harry, and 10 points to Neville, because he tried to prevent Harry and the others from making mistakes. In the end, he also added 60 points for Levin. Looking at Dumbledore's smile when he looked at him, Levin realized something. He understood why Old B had such a bottom line at this time, and it was probably because of him. Old B is afraid that if he acts too biased, it will affect his outstanding student, thus prompting him to degenerate into a dark wizard or something. In short, the next step is the moment of celebration. Ravenclaw is of course a big win, and Gryffindor is also a small win, because they counterattacked from last place to second place in one fell swoop, surpassing their old rival Slytherin. The joyful ceremony made the little wizards almost forget that the final exam results had not been announced yet, but whether they were looking forward to it or feeling uneasy, they would all know their final results. Levin was ranked first in his grade with excellent scores in all subjects. Hermione, who came in second, found Levin privately and asked if she remembered her previous agreement. She would take advantage of the vacation to make up for her flying lessons, which was the shortcoming that prevented her from catching up with Levin. Of course she also knows that she can get everything, except flying lessons, because she works hard enough. And Levin got it all because the highest score was 0. Levin's friends all have good grades, especially his 2 roommates. Under Levin's influence, their grades are at least good. On the other hand, Harry, the boy who lived, impressed everyone with his results this year. Neither he nor Ronald's scores were lower than a pass. After the year-end banquet, Harry, Ronald, and Hermione became heroes again because of extra points. Their situation improved greatly and they almost returned to the state of starting school. Then, it was the departure from school that made people both happy and sad. Before leaving school, Levin also received a notice asking them not to use magic spells outside the school. Levin could tell that this was a magical contract. When he signed his name on the notice, the magical contract was invisibly completed, and strange magical fluctuations appeared on his wand. This is probably Zongzi. However, this does not have much impact on Levin. Even if he cannot use magic, he still has druid spells as a substitute. Speaking of druids, Levin went to the Forbidden Forest again before leaving school. He helped Daisy unlock LV2 and V3 druid abilities and spells, and played with Larry and her younger siblings. One night. Then, he left Hogwarts with his friends and boarded the train. The countryside outside the window is becoming more and more green and tidy, and the train passes through Muggle towns one after another. Muggle-born wizards took off their wizard robes and put on Muggle clothes. Finally, in the evening, the train stopped at platform 9 3/4 of King's Cross Station. Looking at the bustling scene in front of him, Levin knew that this semester was truly over. Chapter 82. Devon, village of Ottery St. Catchpole. This is a medium-sized village, located in a remote area, far away from human habitation. People here live an idyllic and simple life, but they don't know that there is a group of people who call themselves wizards living with them. And they are called Muggles by this group of people. In fact, there are quite a few wizards living near this village. The burrow in the south of the village lives with the Weasley family. In a windmill-shaped house not far from the burrow, the Lovegood family lives. In a small wooden house among the low mountains to the east of the village, there lived an old wizard named Fleming, In addition, there are the Fawcett family, the Diggory family, etc. In a small village with a population of only a few hundred, there are actually wizards numbering 30 or 40 living there. It can be said that the witch content is extremely high. But no matter what, facing the overwhelming population of muggles, wizards will always be in the minority. Therefore, these wizard families living in St. Catchpole village are not only as close as brothers, but at least they all know each other. However, today in July, the wizards in St. Catchpole village discovered that Fleming, who lived alone in the cabin, had actually moved away. It was said that he had gone to live with relatives in the United States. And disappearing with him was the small wooden house with geraniums on the windowsill. People in the village rumored that someone gave him a large sum of money to buy the wooden house and the property rights of the nearby land from him. According to Arthur Weasley, who works at the Ministry of Magic, the person who went to the Ministry of Magic to exchange property rights was a female aura with conspicuous pink hair. The newly moved wizard seems not to like the original wooden house in Book 13. So soon, the place where the wooden house was originally turned into a high stone tower. A few days later, a huge oak tree appeared next to the high stone tower. It was several sizes larger than the largest His Majesty Oak in Dayan, with a diameter of 4 or 5 meters. The entire tree was almost as tall as this tower. It is a wonder. After a few days, a large number of trees and thorns appeared around the tower, almost turning into a shady forest, completely covering the tower. The owner of the house diverted streams from the mountains to form a small river that surrounds the house. He also let 2 thick willow trees grow opposite each other at an angle almost parallel to the river surface, and intertwined in the middle of the river, forming a unique wooden bridge made of 2 willow trees. The growing wickers are woven into the handrails of the wooden bridge, which looks particularly unique. This wooden bridge also became the only way to cross the river and reach the tower. The woods and rivers become the tower's natural walls and moats, blocking any potential intruders from the outside. In short, the wizards in the village of St. Catchpole are very curious about who is so powerful and has created this wonderful scene. Towers can be built with a well-trained wizard construction team, but whether it is planting giant trees, planting forests, digging mountains and rivers, or building bridges with willow trees, these are all operations that ordinary wizards cannot complete. Even Dumbledore may not be able to do it, but the owner of this house completed all this within half a month, which is really amazing. If it weren't for the fact that the 3 floors of defense inside and outside the house gave off an air of unwelcomeness to outsiders, they have long wanted to visit. Unexpectedly, today, this extremely mysterious house finally welcomed a visitor. A huge bus stopped at the entrance of the village. It was a 3-story bus, with the following words written in golden letters on the windshield in front: Night Bus. A bus that was obviously traveling in the city crossed many difficult mountain roads and appeared in front of the lifeless village of St. Catchpole. This kind of thing is unreasonable no matter how you look at it. But the villagers here seemed to ignore all the irrationality, and the bus seemed to them not to exist. Obviously, this is the effect of magic. Soon, the car door opened, and 3 teenagers, 1 boy and 2 girls, got out. After the 3 people left, the bus closed the door and rumbled away at a strange speed. Among the 3 men and women who got off the bus, a girl was holding on to a tree and retching, while the only boy was patting her back gently. Ugh! I will never take the wizard's bus again. Hermione complained loudly. As a muggle, she has built more cars than most wizards. But no car had ever disgusted her more than the night business. Your physical fitness is really poor. Cyrilla on the side shook her head. It's not even as good as the 2 of us Ravenclaws. This is really not in line with your status as a Gryffindor. You. Hermione felt aggrieved. In terms of physical fitness, who can compare with you 2 Quidditch masters? No wonder you suggested taking the night bus, saying you've never tried it before. You did this on purpose. The 2 couldn't help but quarreled. Levin was caught in the middle and had a headache, although after that incident in the auditorium half a month ago, they behaved like good friends in front of others, but whenever they meet in private, they will quarrel like tit for tat. Just like just now, the 2 of them had been arguing all the way. Seeing that they were a little distracted, Levin clapped his hands to attract their attention and said, "Okay. If you go a little further, you will reach my house. Can you have a better attitude?" Hermione and Cyrilla quickly stopped talking and looked at the boy with smiles on their faces. She doesn't look like a little girl trying to please the boy she likes, but like a subordinate meeting her leader. Levin nodded with satisfaction, put on a leadership style, and said in a measured tone, "Hello, classmates, I will just say a few words. There are 3 points I want to say. The first of these first points, step forward across the wooden bridge, is my new home. This is the only way to enter my home normally. You 2 must remember it. The second little point in the first point is that there are many magical defense measures built around my home. Anyone who tries to enter through other means will encounter a trap and be punished. Don't be so naughty. Then the third little point is that if you want to enter my home, you must register your identity with me. Otherwise, even if you cross the bridge, you will get infinitely lost in the woods." Then the fourth little point. Before Levin could finish speaking, the 2 girls ignored him, turned around, crossed the willow bridge, and ran toward the woods, disappearing after a while. Levin stepped onto the wooden bridge quietly as if taking a walk and walked slowly towards the woods. In the woods, Levin turned around and found the 2 missing girls. But now their condition is not very good. Miss Granger's feet were entangled in a branch, and her whole body was hung upside down on the branch of a sycamore tree. Miss Leonlune is even worse. She was tightly entangled by a bunch of vines, and she was completely unable to move. When the 2 saw Levin, they shouted as if they had seen a savior. "Levin, put me down quickly. Untie these vines for me quickly." When Put me down first, I'm a little dizzy hanging my head upside down like this. You should let me go first, Levin, these vines are so disgusting. Let me go first, let me go first. Good guy, even in this state, the two of them still quarreled. Levin shook his head helplessly and said loudly, don't you realize your mistake now? Ha! What? The two were very confused. In the previous explanation, I have mentioned the consequences of straying into the woods, but you didn't listen at all seriously. I thought you didn't listen because you have remembered it, but now. Sorry, Levin, I will try my best to remember it. Please put me down. Levin, okay Levin, I promise I won't do anything perfunctory anymore. Can you untie me? After all, Levin finally freed the two naughty children, one older and one younger. This time, the two of them did not quarrel or make trouble. They behaved like house elves and followed Levin quietly. While listening to him explain this series of precautions, they walked towards the tower. The tower, and the surrounding land, was his property. After leaving school, Levin quickly created a philosopher's stone through memory and used it to create a large amount of gold. It exchanged gold for a large sum of galleons in Gringotts, and purchased the land from the old wizard Fleming with the help of Tonks. As neighbors suspected, only the tower in Levin's new home was the work of the wizarding construction team. Everything else, whether it was planting giant trees, growing forests overnight, digging rivers, or building wooden bridges, were all the results of his own magic. 457 These achievements may be exaggerated in the eyes of wizards, but for a druid, it's not that difficult. Well, it's still a bit difficult. Plant growth, command plant, soft stone art, stone shaping art, wood shaping art, ground digging art, trap art, natural barrier, vine source. Levin has been busy with this for 2 full weeks, using druid spells every day to squeeze himself dry, and he is so tired that he feels dizzy. But the results are also significant. That is this defense system based on natural forces. In this forest, every animal and plant is Levin's helper and spy. And his own druid level has also been upgraded by 2 levels in a row during this high-intensity work, reaching LV7, which is the same as the wizard level. Under the leadership of Levin, they finally passed through the woods and came to a clearing. Levin's tower stands in the middle of the clearing. In front of the open space is a wide yard filled with various ordinary and magical plants, belladonna, white freshweed, sapweed, clover, fragrant mallow, shrunken fig, bubble pod, poisonous tentacle, mandrake, apple tree, belisa tree. He grows all the magical plants that can be found on the market and are relatively easy to grow. Cultivating magic plants is indeed a tedious job. But with the power of a druid, he is much more convenient than an ordinary wizard in this regard. But he still wasn't satisfied. After he reaches LV9, he plans to directly select some plants and use the enlightenment technique to turn them into flower essence trees, letting these plants take care of themselves. This will free up his hands. As soon as she entered the yard, Hermione was dazzled by the series of plants. Look at this, look at that, it felt like everything in the herbal medicine textbook for grades 1 to 7 was displayed before my eyes. Cyrilla was attracted by the huge oak tree dozens of meters high. She keenly saw that Levin's eagle owl, Hermer, had occupied a tree hole in the tree and was peering out to observe them. Just then, Levin opened the tower door. Come on girls. Welcome to my mage tower, Chapter 83. That's right, Levin positioned his tower as the mage tower. The kind where arcane mages live. Unlike ordinary wizard residences, the mage's tower is not only a residence, but also his sanctuary, research center, and fortress. To this end, the mage will gather powerful arcane energy in the mage tower and build an elemental pool for use. There will be a laboratory inside the mage tower that stores a large amount of arcane equipment, and there will be rooms with different functions such as a bondage room, a blasting room, a sealing room, a gravity room, etc. This is also a treasure house where mages keep their collections, a refuge in times of danger, and is protected by various defensive magics. Through the use of arcane drawings, rays, magical currents, and other mysterious forces, the mage enhances his arcane abilities through the mage tower, allowing him to expand his control over elements, planes, and other abilities. Of course, the above are just ideal settings. The reality is that Levin currently only gives it the shape of a tower. As for the core element pool, he simply cannot build it with his current capabilities, let alone other functions that rely on the element pool to drive it. There is no way, his level is still too low at the moment, those fancy functions can only be built slowly after he reaches a higher level. At this time, the inside of the mage tower is completely a normal house. As soon as you enter the door, you will find the living room on the first floor. The kitchen and dining room are also on the first floor. Of course, there is also a large fireplace, which is connected to the flow network. The second, third, and fourth floors are bedrooms and guest rooms. Of course, there are also functional rooms such as bathrooms, wardrobes, libraries, and storage rooms. The fifth floor is Levin's study and workshop, where everything he needs for work and study is found. The current top floor is the sixth floor, which was designed by Levin as a star observation deck. The bottom is the basement, which currently only has 1 floor. Here is another workshop, where Levin studies alchemy and brews potions. In addition, the magic material storage room, wine cellar, etc. are here. There is another exit here. A tree hole connected to the roots of a giant oak tree. The entire tower is fully furnished and well decorated. With the philosopher's stone in hand, Levin doesn't need to save himself money in these areas. Levin gave the two of them a tour and received a lot of admiration. Cyrilla felt incredible that Levin could have a home of his own and that it was built so beautifully. Obviously everyone is an outsider, but she has been here for 4 or 5 years, but she still has no place of her own. She can only stay in a hotel during the holidays and make a living by collecting medicinal materials and helping wizards solve troublesome magical creatures. This isn't that what a witcher does? On the other hand, Levin only attended Hogwarts for 1 year and managed to accumulate such a huge fortune. Although no one knows how he did it, there were legal procedures for all this. After visiting the tower, Cyrilla also realized that even though he had overestimated Levin's ability as much as possible before, it seemed that he still underestimated him now. Especially when I heard that Levin achieved all this through the Philosopher's Stone, I was even more impressed. The previously promised goal of building a floating city and exploring Otherworld is not that far-fetched. But compared to Cyrilla, a visitor from Otherworld, Hermione understood the meaning of this tower better. Hermione's parents are both dentists. In Dayan, dentistry is a high-paying profession, and the family belongs to a decent middle-class family. Like the Dursleys, their family owns a single-family house in the suburbs of London and leads a decent life. She also knows very well how difficult it is to own a house like this. The area of a this tower building is several times larger than her home, and the decoration inside is also higher than her home. The only drawback is that there are no electrical appliances. This means that Xiao Gang, who is of the same age as her, has acquired an unimaginable wealth. I've decided, Levin. After completing the tour, while sitting on the sofa in the living room, Cyrilla announced loudly, I don't want to stay in a hotel anymore. I'll live here. Of course, Zilly, in fact, if you don't tell me, I will take the initiative to invite you. After moving here this time, there is no need to move out. Levin said gently. As a fellow visitor to Otherworld, Cyrilla is the person Levin can trust most in this world and is also his closest ally. In this case, it's not a big deal to provide her with accommodation. He doesn't have much else here, just more rooms. After hearing the news, Hermione immediately became nervous. He didn't know what was going on at Zirella's house. But she knew that she came here with her parents' permission to learn how to fly a broomstick and use magic during the summer vacation. She has her own home, and it is impossible for her to move directly to Levin's house like the other party. But if you do this, won't you be one step behind that woman? Thinking of this, Miss Granger suddenly felt aggrieved. As if sensing something from his heart, Levin immediately looked at her. And you, Hermione? Although you can't live here permanently, there will always be a room reserved for you in the tower. Thank you, Levin. This promise was like the warm sun in winter, instantly warming the girl's heart and moving him beyond measure. Levin also breathed a sigh of relief. To maintain a balance among girls also requires skills. Since today is the first day for the two of them to come to the tower, Levin has not planned any activities. After dinner, the three of them read, chatted, played wizard chess, etc. by the fireplace, and then went to bed early. While sleeping in bed, Levin missed Muggle electronics. Everything about a wizard's life is good, but there are too few entertainment options. If there was a TV, game console, etc. at home, it wouldn't be as boring as it is now. Thinking of this, he suddenly had the idea to visit the Weasley family at the Burrow and ask Arthur Weasley for advice on the magic of transforming Muggle items. Early the next morning, Levin was woken up by his biological clock. The chirping of birds sounded outside the window, announcing the arrival of a new day. The huge natural atmosphere of the giant oak tree attracts many nearby birds and animals to settle in the woods around the tower. Despite the hot summer weather, the room was still cool. While mastering the skills of making Philosopher's Stone, Levin also obtained alchemy specialization, which raised his alchemy level to a new level. Now he can skillfully enchant various low-level magics. For example, this is the effect of the third-level spell control temperature. After washing up, Levin went to the kitchen on the first floor and started making breakfast for the three of them. Sure enough, there is a house elf missing at home. Invisible Servant. Although this spell is also very convenient, the intelligence of the invisible servant created is too low, so it can only be arranged to do some cleaning work. They simply couldn't do something as creative as cooking, unless Levin planned to eat pig food. Levin could cook in his previous life, but cooking with magic is another matter. Therefore, he also visited many books in the kitchen, Magic for Your Cheese, The Magic of Baking Bread, Fantastic Beasts in the Pot, Conjure a Feast, and so on. Not long after, Hermione ran down from the second floor sleepily, wearing pajamas and disheveled hair, looking like she had just woken up. She felt very novel about everything she lived in the magical world. After arriving on the first floor, she was immediately attracted by the movement in the kitchen, and watched in trance as Levin used magic to cook. Seeing Levin skillfully waving the wand and controlling the pots and pans, she felt a sense of admiration. When she was at home, she would see her mother cooking in the kitchen every day, while she just watched from the side and could not help much. Now, she can't help either. Hermione admired Levin more and more. This boy, who is similar to her age, knows a lot. Not only is he smart, has good grades, can create his own magic, and can also cook. Speaking of which, she never thought that one day she would leave home, stay away from her parents, and live with a boy in a place far away from human habitation. Etc. Is this considered living together? It should be considered, but unfortunately, there is also an eyesore Cyrilla. Of course, in Cyrilla's eyes, she also has the same status. The girl was in a daze for a moment, and suddenly felt that she was useless, so she took the initiative and said, how about I cook tomorrow? Can you cook? Levin asked without looking back. Should, Lee, be able to do it? Hermione recalled, my mother and I have learned it several times, but we have never used magic to cook. It doesn't matter, you can try whatever you want. Although the Ministry of Magic can use trace wire to detect whether a young wizard has used magic, this detection is very rough. Trace silk can only determine the approximate location of the magic user, but cannot lock the specific identity of the caster. In other words, they can only monitor young wizards from Muggle families. In wizarding settlements like St. Catchpole Village, there are a large number of wizards who use spells, and the Ministry of Magic cannot detect them at all. This was one of the reasons why Hermione was invited here. Levin carefully divided the toast, bacon, and fried eggs into 3 parts, then turned around and said, "Go and wash up quickly. I will teach you how to use a broomstick in the morning. By the way, remember to call Zilliton outside." Hermione nodded and asked doubtfully, "Cirilla is up already? She got up much earlier than you did." Levin's answer surprised her. At this time, she is probably doing morning exercises in the yard. Then Hermione saw Angry dancing with a steel sword in the yard. "Did I actually regard such a muscular woman as a competitor? Sorry for disturbing you." In short, this is how the cohabitation life of 1 man and 2 women began. Chapter 84. Levin had to admit that it was more interesting for 3 people to live together than alone. After breakfast, Levin took Hermione, each carrying a Nimbus 2001, to the Stoat Mountain outside the village to practice riding a broomstick. In his original plan, this would be a fulfilling and charming exercise. For a novice like Hermione, someone needs to teach her how to use a broomstick from scratch. Levin even planned it. In order to better help her learn to fly, he needs to serve as a safety officer, ride on the same broomstick with her, and sit behind her when she flies. Once there is any problem with her control, Levin can take action at any time and control the situation. Of course, during this process, there will inevitably be intimate contacts such as holding hands and hugging waists. But these are all normal bumps and bumps during exercise, no big deal. But because of the existence of Cirilla, half of his plans fell apart from the start. When she heard that they were going to ride broomsticks, Cirilla volunteered to be their sparring partner. Now, the effect of Quoen's flying lessons is reduced by half. With Ciri watching eagerly, not to mention Levin, even Hermione herself was a little timid. "I have to withdraw my hand at the slightest touch, let alone charming." Fortunately, although the effect of the course has lost half of its ambiguity, but the teaching itself is the most effective half. With Ciri beside her, sarcastic, Hermione was training hard, almost out of anger, just to not embarrass herself in front of the other party. It was only the first day of 907, and she was able to fly steadily and slowly on a broomstick. With the current progress, Levin believes that within a week, Hermione will be able to fly through the air on a broomstick. In addition to learning to broom, he and Zilly were assigned their own homework every day. Specifically, it is a practical magic class. Although Levin doesn't know whether an unknown Ginny will open the Chamber of Secrets next semester due to his butterfly effect, but at least he knows one thing: with Harry Potter enrolling in school, Voldemort's recovery will be a matter of time. The entire wizarding world is gradually becoming chaotic, therefore, whether it is for self-protection or future career, they all need to learn practical combat spells. To this end, Levin used magic to expand a large area of the basement as a training ground for magic spells. Levin brought them here that afternoon. In terms of practical magic, Hermione and Ciri have different levels, and naturally their courses are also different. In this regard, Ciri, who has mastered the skills of a witcher, is at a much higher level. In addition, in order to make money in the past 4 years, I have imitated my adoptive father's demon hunter mission. She has no shortage of practical skills and experience. What is lacking is useful fighting methods. So, Levin directly taught her 2 good spells and let her practice them on her own. Dragon Breath. Deb, cone of flame bursts out in front of you. This spell can be cast instantly, but there is a cooling time for casting. Elemental Shout. When the caster is attacked, he can instinctively trigger a counterattack, allowing the enemy to be surrounded by elements. There are 2 spells, one requires no preparation and the other is a counterattack spell. They are both the most practical spells in fierce battles. Shirley was very satisfied, so she went to the other side to practice by herself. Hermione was honored to be taught by Levin personally. Battles between wizards can be roughly divided into 2 types, prepared battles and unprepared battles. A prepared battle is to detect the enemy's identity, location, fighting methods, and special spells in advance, and then prepare defenses, medicines, and combat methods for the opponent in advance, and then ambush on the opponent's only path, waiting for the opponent show up, chant a powerful spell in advance, and then launch a sneak attack. A prepared battle is actually the battle that wizards like best, because wizards can learn many spells and have rich methods. As long as they deal with them in advance, they can deal with almost any kind of enemy. For example, when facing a fire dragon, you need to prepare fireproof medicine, flying vehicles, restraint props, and eye disease spells in advance. To deal with the basilisk, you need to prepare early warning props, induction props, antidote potions, petrochemical removing potions, live roosters, etc. A prepared battle depends on the wizard's knowledge, resources, breadth of magic mastery, etc. But in most cases, we will encounter unprepared battles. Sneak attacks, chance encounters, impromptu duels, and unexpected encounters with magical creatures are all scenarios that we will face in unprepared battles. In this case, it's useless no matter how much magic you learn, because the outcome is on a thin line, and the only ones that can have an effect are the spells you can cast the fastest. Cirilla has done a very good job in this regard. When fighting without preparation, what matters is 3 words: fast, accurate, and ruthless. Whoever can hit the opponent the fastest, most accurately and hardest will win. The word ruthless mainly depends on your mastery of spells and your own magic power, so I won't dwell on it here. What I need you to practice today is fast and accurate. The so-called speed naturally comes from the proficiency in magic spells. So I won't teach you a new spell today, you only need to practice a spell you have already learned, the disarming spell. This is the simplest of the ordinary combat spells and the fastest to cast. As long as you can use the disarming spell quickly, accurately, and hard in battle, you will be enough to deal with 80% of dark wizards. Levin talked in front of Hermione, and the girl listened attentively. Beside her, a pen was continuously taking notes using the scribe technique. Levin doesn't expect to train Hermione to be like Siri, swinging a sword and using magic at the same time. The whole Harry Potter thing may only be done by Godric Gryffindor himself. In comparison, Hermione should be more suitable for prepared battles. Levin was training like this just to increase her ability to save her life. Your next goal is to accurately hit the red dots on these targets. Levin waved his wand, and 4 or 5 scarecrows stood up more than 20 meters away, and then fell down again. There are red dots painted on the wrists, chests, and foreheads of these scarecrows, which are also the best targets. Then, let's start now. Hermione held her breath and focused, looking ahead. Suddenly the scarecrow on the far left stood up. Hermione immediately waved her wand, and a red light shot out, but it went directly over its shoulder and hit the wall. By the time she wanted to hit him again, the scarecrow had collapsed again. Levin shook his head. No matter how powerful the spell is, it will have no effect if it fails to hit. Faced with the sudden appearance of the scarecrow, Hermione's movements were fast enough, but her accuracy was a bit off. There is no shortcut to fighting, it just requires constant training. The practice lasted for a full hour, and Hermione was so tired that she was out of breath and her magic power was empty, so she stopped. Levin helped Hermione sit on the sofa next to her, handed her a cup of blue magic potion, and then went to Shirley's place. Then he saw that the girl was trying to dodge while rolling, using the dragon breath technique in between. Seeing Levin, Shirley stood up, wiped her sweat and walked over. How is it? The little girl has finished teaching. Levin nodded. Let's see how you are doing and if you've encountered any problems. Zilly tilted her head and replied, I have practiced dragon breath technique very well. I can guarantee that I can use it without making mistakes every time. But elemental shout is a bit troublesome. This kind of counterattack spell, it's easy to practice alone. She said, looking at Levin expectantly. Is there anything I can do to help? Levin heard the song and understood its meaning. Certainly. Siri was so happy that she handed Levin a practice sword, and he knew he was already prepared. Since you said so, how about you practice sword practice with me? Levin has never practiced using weapons in the past, so rashly squaring off against her, a veteran, isn't it just looking for abuse? But since Zilly said so, as a man, it would be wrong for him not to agree. Fine. Levin took the edgeless sword for practice and waved it casually to try out the feel. Since you sincerely invited me, I will accompany you through 2 moves. Chapter 85. Ding. When? Ding. In the training ground in the basement of the tower, Hermione, who had exhausted her magic power, was sitting on the sofa at the edge of the field, staring at the 2 people in the center of the training field with dumbfounded eyes. They held steel swords and kept attacking each other while moving around. Stab, slash, parry, block, dodge, whether on their hands or on their feet, the movements of both parties were so fast that it was dizzying to watch. As the sword blade flashed, the 2 of them seemed to be dancing on the tip of the sword, and their moves were full of danger every day. Hermione discovered that she had never seen such a dangerous and exciting cold weapon battle, and even professional fencers could not produce such an effect. But even in such a high-speed battle, the 2 of them remained cautious, because every successful attack attempt, both the attacker and the attacked, will pay a price. The sword used for practice is an edgeless sword without an edge, but the person who is struck still has to endure severe pain. But successfully hitting the enemy also comes with a price. Hermione saw with her own eyes that when Levin successfully hit Siri, a burst of blazing fire appeared on his body. Clang. The 2 sides exchanged blows again, and after they bounced each other away, Zilly shouted happily, no more fights, that's it for today. With that said, he threw away the edgeless sword and sat down on the ground. You're not going to fight now? I feel like I'm having fun playing. Levin also put aside his sword and sat next to her. At this time, both of their bodies were smoky, which was the effect of triggering the elements to shout. After listening to Levin's words, Shirley said speechlessly, you think everyone is as perverted as you. Obviously this is my first time to kill someone with a sword, and I thought I would finally have the opportunity to be your teacher. Who knows, in just a few rounds you'll be able to dance well, and then you'll be able to fight me evenly in a sword fight. You are making me very frustrated. Levin shook his head and said with a smile, no way, I have a smart mind and can write quickly. In fact, he is not just a quick learner. In the process of learning swordsmanship skills with Zilly, he also gained new things. Through practical practice, you have understood long sword specialization. You used weapons and cast spells at the same time in battle. You learned the skills of using both at the same time. You learned the abilities spell combat, spell strike, and spell casting with armor. Spell combat, you have learned the tactics of how to cast spells and use weapons at the same time. To use this ability, you must have one hand free and the other hand holding a light or one-handed melee weapon. Casting spells and using weapons do not interact with each other. Interference spell strike, whenever you release a spell with a contact range, it can deliver this spell through a melee attack as part of a melee attack. Casting spells while wearing armor, when you wear armor, you can ignore the impact of wearing armor on spell casting and cast spells normally. There is no new profession this time, but it is the core ability of the magic warrior profession. A magic warrior with these three abilities can not only wear heavy armor, wield a sword with one hand, and cast spells with the other hand, moreover, melee contact attack spells such as electric claws and burning hands, as well as long-range contact attack spells such as acid arrows and scorching rays, can be attached to the blade, thus causing double physical and magical damage. With this set of skills, I feel like I am even more powerful in battle. Ciri was indeed his lucky star. It just so happened that this skill was learned through sparring with her, and it was also the most suitable skill for her to fight. So, after resting for a while, he picked up the edgeless sword and greeted Cyrilla warmly. "Come on, Ciri, look at the tricks I just learned." As he spoke, he held a sword in one hand and recited a spell in his mouth. The next moment, the sword blade became shrouded in ice mist, and the cold air was overwhelming. Seeing this scene, Zilly's eyes lit up. Then, Quoin pointed at a training dummy and swung his sword forcefully. Kaka. After all, it was a sword without an edge, so it left no sword marks on the dummy. But when the sword blade passed by, the power of frost attached to the blade exploded, freezing the entire dummy into ice. The light in Zilly's eyes grew brighter. What you just used was Ice Arrow. Being born with the source of demons, she was keenly aware of the secrets. But because of this, she had more questions. It's obviously the same spell, how did you attach the ice arrow to the weapon? This is the skill I want to show, Levin said proudly, the skill called Spell Strike. Do you want to learn? I'll teach you. Very good. Shirley welcomed this and was amazed by Levin's creativity. After a brief understanding, she understood, this technique called Spell Strike, combined with spell combat and spell casting while wearing armor, is the perfect combat technique for those who like both melee combat and spell casting. Her dual abilities are organically combined to produce a geometric multiple effect. This technique is not only suitable for her, but also suitable for demon hunters. If her adoptive father, the White Wolf Gerald, heard about it, he would go crazy with greed. Therefore, in the following days, she also had urgent learning goals. The three people's cohabitation life has become increasingly regular. Every morning, Quoin and Zilly would accompany Hermione to learn to fly. In the afternoon, there will be actual combat training. Hermione will practice basic combat skills, while Ciri will practice magic warrior skills. The evening is free time, everyone can do what they want to do. For example, Hermione will learn magic that interests her. Shirley became interested in Gwent, which was popular in her hometown, and pestered Yewen to make a badge of Gwent for her. As for Levin himself, he locked himself in the underground alchemy workshop for several nights, and occasionally ran to Diagon Alley through the fireplace to purchase many precious materials and magic metals. Finally, on the night of the seventh day, Levin walked out of the alchemy workshop, carrying a long sword inlaid with various gems and shining silver. This is the arcane sword 1.0 I designed. Levin put the long sword on the table and showed it to the girls proudly. What a beautiful sword. Well, he looks handsome. Seeing the elegant sword body and the glitter inlaid on it, the little witch's eyes shone. From this point alone, they have a lot in common with the dragon. That's the magic prop designed by me, Levin Green. First of all, there will be no problems with the aesthetics. Levin was pleased that someone could appreciate his designs, continuing, a euro please give me flowers a euro but this sword is not only beautiful, its functions are even more amazing. First of all, this sword has very good magic conductivity and can easily attach magic to the blade. Secondly, I also imitated the structure of the wand and added a similar structure inside the hilt. This makes this arcane sword not only capable of cutting people, but it can also replace the role of the wand and help cast spells. In this way, the spellcaster does not need to bring an extra staff in battle, and only needs a sword to complete all the requirements for promotion from combat to wizard. As soon as these words came out, Cyrilla immediately showed a longing expression. Isn't this a weapon tailor-made for her? Hermione didn't have this need, but she admired it. But Levin was not satisfied. Because I was short on time, I only designed version 1.0, and there are still more features that have not been added 1.0. Hermione immediately understood the meaning of the number. You mean, there will be 2.0 and 3.0 in the future? That's right. Levin clapped his hands. In the future, I plan to add a transformation function to the arcane sword, which will maintain the wand state during normal times, but will transform back into a sword when fighting is needed. In addition, it also has the function of breaking demons and storing demons. Levin talks eloquently, and every function he talks about is eye-catching. In the end, Shirley couldn't help but interrupted Levin's dream of the future. Levin, I have something to ask you. She looked a little embarrassed, but in the end her desire for the arcane sword suppressed her shame. How much does it cost to make such a sword? If you only count the material cost, it's not much, maybe 5,000 galleons. Levin casually mentioned a huge number. It seems that the Philosopher's Stone has done a lot of damage to his view of money. This number also shocked Shirley, 5,000 galleons. She spends less than 500 galleons a year. How many commissions does she have to do to earn these 5,000 galleons? Fortunately, Levin immediately changed the subject. However, this takes into account the cost of early research and development and failure losses. If it is truly mass-produced, the price of a sword will be somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 ronto. 1,000 to 2,000 is still a huge number. Just when she was thinking hard about how to save the money, Levin offered her an olive branch at the right time. If Ciri also wants an arcane sword, I have another plan. It just so happens that I have to do something relatively dangerous recently and I need a helper. If you are willing to help me with this matter, then after it is completed, I will make an arcane sword for you. What do you think? With Levin's financial resources and ability, of course he can make her a sword for free. But he didn't do that, on the one hand, considering that the relationship between the two has not reached the point where they cannot distinguish each other, on the other hand, the lion cubs of Sintra also have their own pride. I will agree to this kind of thing even if you don't mention the reward. Zilli said firmly. What is the specific task? Then she heard a string of dangerous words coming out of Levin's mouth. Hunt a chimera. Chapter 86. The chimera is a very bloodthirsty and violent magical creature native to Greece. It has the head of a lion, the body of a goat, and the tail of a fire dragon. Because this creature is so dangerous, the Ministry of Magic classifies it as the highest level creature, and their eggs are also Class A prohibited trade items. Hearing that Levin planned to hunt this dangerous creature, Hermione on the side became anxious. I can't believe you actually want to do such a dangerous thing. That's a chimera. An XXXXX level dangerous object from the Ministry of Magic. The Ministry of Magic's danger rating evaluates a creature's aggressiveness, not its actual danger. Levin argued, the Acromantula is also a XXXXX level dangerous creature, the same level as the chimera and the fire dragon. But believe me, I have met them in the Forbidden Forest. As long as the appropriate magic is used, even a little wizard can be defeated easily, and it is much safer than the fire dragon. 310 You are quibbling. Hermione's hands shook angrily. That's not Norbert, nor is it a three-headed hell dog, nor is it Fang. It's an extremely dangerous magical creature. As she spoke, she hurriedly found a book from the bookshelf, spread it out in front of Levin, and pointed at the chimera in the picture, her eyes flashing with fear. In the entire history of wizards, there is only one record of successfully killing a chimera, and this wizard later fell off his Pegasus and died because of exhaustion. Hermione held up the book, almost poking Levin in the eye. Levin sighed, since being cute is not enough, we can only present the facts and make sense. Well, Hermione, maybe you're right, chimeras are terrifying magical creatures. But is it difficult for us to be weak chickens who are allowed to be slaughtered? That's right. Shirley also said, you can rest assured, little girl, I will protect him. I'm not a little girl. Hermione looked at the other person's erect rabbit, then looked at her own poached eggs, and suddenly became angry. Also, the book says that magical creatures like chimeras have strong magic resistance, and ordinary spells can't do anything to them. How are you going to deal with them? That's why Ciri has practiced the spell strike technique for so long, and that's why I made this arcane sword before coming up with this plan. Levin pushed the arcane sword forward. Hermione was stunned for a moment, feeling that it seemed to make sense. Besides, let me tell you a secret. Seeing that the other party was about to relent, Levin struck while the iron was hot. Aren't you always curious about why I feel so much better off after the Christmas vacation and why my whole wardrobe has changed? I didn't tell you at that time because I was afraid that if I told you, you would think you were bragging. Now it seems that I can't dispel your worries without showing my strength. Then, he briefly described the process of eradicating the poacher organization with Tonks Road. That is to say, you defeated a group of dark wizards half a year ago, right? Hermione suddenly realized. No wonder you changed completely after that. No wonder Sister Tonks helped you guarantee the purchase of this house. I didn't expect you to have such an interesting experience at that time. Shirley was also in high spirits. It seems that being with you is indispensable for such exciting things. Since Levin was able to defeat a group of dark wizards at that time, it cannot be said that it was very dangerous to face the chimera beast. Hermione figured this out and had no reason to stop her. But why do you have to hunt such a dangerous creature? Even if she couldn't stop it, she still had some questions she wanted to know. I need certain materials from the chimera to refine a magic potion. Levin thought for a while and finally revealed part of the truth. That's a potion about animagus transformation. Animagus. Speaking of this, Hermione is no longer sleepy. She has always been interested in this kind of cutting-edge magic. Are you going to perform animagus? I heard that it is a very complicated and difficult process. Not only do you need to hold a mandrake leaf in your mouth for a month, but you also have to wait until the stormy weather to get it. Complete the ritual. Professor McGonagall said that this process is very dangerous, and people may become obsessed and unable to return to normal humans. She asked us not to try it in private. Professor McGonagall is right, it is indeed a cumbersome and dangerous ritual, so I am trying to simplify the whole process. Levin said, his tone full of temptation, and a certain material on the chimera is exactly what I need for my experiment. If I succeed, you won't have to go through so much trouble if you want to learn animagus in the future. Is that so? After hearing Levin's explanation, Hermione, who had no reason to continue to block her, immediately stepped back. Since it's for this reason, then I can't stop you. After convincing the worried little witch, Levin's hunting plan will be officially launched. Early the next morning, after breakfast, Levin is sitting in the living room, bathing and burning incense. The incense burner this time is entirely made of bronze, with dragons and phoenixes carved on it. It's so exquisite. What are placed around are not simple ivory handicrafts, but 4 complete ivory carvings. After the economic situation improved, Levin's ritual equipment was upgraded, always choosing the most expensive one. He knows one thing very well, the only advantage of cheap products is that they are cheap. The only disadvantage of expensive products is that they are expensive. Levin sat cross-legged in front of the ceremony table and began to perform the ritual of understanding the legend. Knowledge of legends, look for the chimera beast for me, the closer the better. As the smoke filled the air, it didn't take long for Levin to reveal his goal this time. Cornwall, the village of Dingworth, the seaside, the cave, is it so close to us? And there seem to be traces of someone in that cave. Cornwall borders Devon, where Levin is located, to the east, the English Channel to the south, and the Atlantic Ocean to the west and north. And after crossing the English Channel, there is Europe, the origin of the chimera is Greece in Europe. Through this series of clues, Levin immediately made a guess. Chimeraman alone generally does not have the ability to cross the English Channel and land in the Great Yin. Combined with the cave that may be used as a hiding place for 5.6, and the human traces in the cave, Levin guessed that there were probably poachers, smugglers, or something who brought a chimera here. You know, although chimeras are dangerous and difficult to kill, but it is still possible to temporarily trap it in some way. Chimera eggs have a very high price on the black market. However, no matter what the truth is, it will not affect my determination to hunt. Now that we have found our target, Siri, let's set off. Okay. Chapter 87. Regarding the hunting of chimeras, although Levin spoke confidently in front of Hermione, but that didn't stop him from making preparations before setting off. In addition to regular potions such as the uplifting potion to restore wounds and the magic potion to restore magic power, Levin also secretly brought 2 bottles of elixir of life. This medicine made from the Philosopher's Stone not only prolongs life, but also has therapeutic effects on the living dead and flesh and bones. In case of an accident, it is the protection for both of them. Finally, Levin and Siri each shouldered a long sword, put their broomsticks into their bags, and then walked towards the fireplace. Shirley passed through the flow network first and had already gone to Cornwall. Then let's set off, fun. In front of the burning fireplace, Levin turned back and said goodbye to Hermione. Well, remember to be careful and don't get hurt. Hermione waved her hand in concern. Don't worry, Hermione, I won't leave you alone in an empty room. After saying that, Levin also poured the flow powder into the fireplace, took a step forward, and disappeared into it. Hermione was left alone 5 sitting in the living room, staring steadily at the direction in which the boy disappeared. This is the first time for a girl to feel so dissatisfied with her own powerlessness. In the women's restroom last Halloween, she had to hide aside and watch a boy fight a troll. The last time in the restricted area, she had to return with Ronald and watch the boy go to fight Voldemort. This time, she could only stay alone in the tower and watch the boy hunt the chimera. Of course, unlike the previous 2 times, this time he is not alone, he also has a helper by his side, the violent muscular girl Cyrilla, but that person wasn't her, Hermione. Is it difficult for her to always rely on the boy and stay under his protective umbrella? At this moment, Hermione made up her mind. Levin Green, this boy, has only known him for less than a year, and I have witnessed him accomplish all kinds of miracles. He is destined not to be an ordinary person. And what about yourself? She also wanted to be by his side, as a friend, as something more. Therefore, she must work hard, whether it is fighting or studying. This is not only for self-satisfaction, but also to be able to fight side by side with him at critical moments. Levin had no idea what Miss Granger was thinking after he left. After arriving in Cornwall via Flew, he and Siri mounted their brooms and flew towards Dingworth village. It is indeed a very refreshing thing to soar through the air at extreme speeds. The speed limit of Nimbus 2001 was very high. It took the 2 of them less than 2 hours to reach Dingworth village and saw the coastline from a distance. Mountains of moss rise from the deep green waters, the sand turns surprisingly white, and magical serpentine rocks sparkle in the sunlight. Looking from a distance, you can still see many tourists coming and going on the beach. In order to avoid trouble, the 2 landed on the ground a few hundred meters away, put away their brooms, and walked towards the coast. Walking along the rocky path, Levin was finally able to see the coast hidden behind the cliffs. This beach is covered with rocks and is backed by a towering cliff. There is also a church said to be from the 14th century on the top of the cliff. How far are we from the cave? Siri asked. It's about 200 to 300 meters further along the coast. However, fate always seems to have some surprises. I saw the tourists on the beach in front suddenly making all kinds of screams and running around with their hands raised, as if everyone had gone crazy. Obviously just now they were enjoying the sun, beach, and waves there. What happened? Zilly drew out the steel sword vigilantly. Let's go and have a look. After Levin confirmed that the buffs on both of them were complete, he also pulled out the arcane sword. In order to hide their identities, the 2 covered their faces with scarves and ran together in the direction of the group of lunatics. After getting closer, he saw that above the crowd, there was a pink bird with white eyes, flying and singing at the same time. In the crowd, 4 or 5 dwarfs wearing red hats raised wooden sticks and smashed them at the people around them while making weird laughs. That's the evil bird, and the red hat. That's what they did. Levin immediately recognized the identities of the 2 creatures and immediately made arrangements. Siri, I'll control these people, you go and shut up that bird. Clear. The owl is a bird native to Africa with unusually bright feathers. Its coat color may be orange, pink, lime green, or yellow. This is a very dangerous creature, and their high-pitched, chirping calls can drive anyone who hears them crazy. If these muggles in front of them are not calmed down, they may become madmen for the rest of their lives. But how to get rid of the influence of the evil bird as quickly as possible? Levin made up his mind instantly. Psychic Blast. Levin came to the front of the crowd and directly exploded the power of his mind. Impacted by this violent spiritual power, All the madmen present instantly rolled their eyes, and then fell to the ground neatly. This is his method, to fight violence with violence. Knock them out one by one and they won't hear the birds chirping. Afraid that this might not be safe, Levin gestured against the beach in front of him. Hypnosis pattern. A huge and complicated pattern appeared on the beach, covering everyone present. A few unlucky red hats, who had just been stunned by Levin's psychic blast, finally got up and their eyes met the 350 patterns on the ground. Then, several red hats were deeply fascinated by the patterns, and then fell asleep on the ground one after another. Just by grabbing grass and beating rabbits, these evil little monsters were taken care of. At this moment, Siri over there also completed her task and came to Levin holding an evil bird that was frozen into lumps of ice by ice arrow. Here, this is the guy you want. Levin caught the evil bird and cast a silent and breathless curse on it. After confirming that it had no ability to scream anymore, it was thawed. Immediately afterwards, I began to use the power of the mind to connect to its mind, and used the ability of animal dialogue to ask it questions. Where is your master? Evil bird and red hat, two unrelated magical creatures appear on a beach that is not their habitat. Levin doesn't believe that there is no mastermind behind this. The evil bird is not very intelligent, but it is enough to point Levin in the right direction. Looking along the direction, English saw a towering reef. Okay, thank you, little guy. Levin touched its feathers. If you want, you can wait for me here. I will come back to settle you after I deal with your old master. After that, he and Zilly walked towards the reef. According to the perception of the power of the mind, there is indeed a person behind the reef. Chapter 88. Hearing the footsteps of the two, the person behind the rock remained motionless, seeming to be pretending not to know. Could it be that he is covering his ears? It wasn't until the two came to the reef that Levin understood the reason. After working on it for a long time, this guy wore an invisibility cloak and relied on this to think that others could not see him. It was Levin's spiritual power that discovered his figure through the invisibility cloak, but did not discover the existence of the invisibility cloak. Stop hiding. After looking at the rock for a long time, Zilly finally couldn't hold back and spoke first. We knew you were there. Tell me, wizard, why did you attack the muggles on the beach? Seeing that he could no longer hide himself, the wizard suddenly lifted his invisibility cloak, revealing the appearance of a middle-aged man wearing a square coin underneath. He did not answer Shirai's question, but cursed at the two of them. Italian expletive, I knew you were Italian expletive horrors. A few muggles lured you out. If it weren't for Italian expletive traders, how could you have discovered where I'm hiding? Since you caught me, I won't act anymore. I am a double smuggler from the Yin Empire in Italy, codenamed Lizard. I smuggled the rune snake, and I also smuggled the chimera from Italy. But since you have caught it, I will definitely not be able to take it away, but you can't even think about it. The two of them listened to this guy who called himself Salamander talking about his own thoughts and defenses. Levin already has a rough idea of a euro what's going on. He had probably seen them coming on their broomsticks. The other party suspected that the visitors were Aurors, so they created chaos among the muggles to attract the Aurors' attention. After cursing, Salamander suddenly opened a bag. A huge and strange monster suddenly emerged from the bag. With a figure of 2 meters tall, a lion's head, a goat's body, and a fire dragon's tail, it was exactly the target of their trip, the chimera. This cruel creature saw a human being appearing in front of him as soon as he got out of his cage. Thinking that it was these guys who locked themselves in that dark place, the violent chimera immediately launched an attack. It opened its lion's mouth wide and sprayed poisonous flames towards Levin. Ordinary wizards who are burned by this fire will have to be tortured by the fire poison for a long time even if they are not burned to death on the spot. But Levin actually didn't dodge. He stood directly in front of the chimera and resisted its breath head-on, as if he couldn't dodge. At least that's how it seems in the eyes of Salamander and Chimramon. Just when they thought Levin was about to be burned to coke, a ray of silver light cut through the breath and struck the chimera beast in the face. A large gash was immediately cut into the lion's face, but before the blood could spurt out, the blood vessels at the wound and half of the face were frozen. This is not to stop the bleeding, but to seal Chimeramon's powerful recovery ability. Otherwise, this gap will only need a minute or two to recover without even a trace of injury. Only then did Levin's figure appear from the smoke of breath. Every part of his body was unscathed, not even the robe had a hint of soot. Since he knew in advance that chimeras were good at breathing, Levin would naturally be prepared. Fireproof aura plus resistance to energy damage, fire, plus elemental shield, fire. Even if this triple fireproof element can't protect against Snape's magical flames, it can't protect against your mere chimera. This is the so-called prepared war and fight. Once the wizard understands the situation and focuses on targeting it, the suppressive power displayed by the wizard is absolutely beyond imagination. With its face slashed and frozen, the chimera shook its head in pain, and at the same time it brewed flames again, as if it wanted to directly melt the ice block that hindered self-repair. But Levin didn't give him a chance. His magic was ready, and the seaside was the perfect place to cast it. Black tentacle. Just listen to the sudden fierce sound of water next to the reef. Dozens of black tentacles 7 or 8 meters long and as thick as a thigh suddenly emerged from the sea, like the tentacles of a sea monster, and rolled straight towards the chimera, tying it into a knot. One tentacle in particular curled directly around its throat, causing its entire breath to be held in its throat. An attempt to melt the ice failed. The chimera struggled hard to get rid of the entanglement of the tentacles. But this black tentacle has a strength of 19, which is almost the same as the chimera. You know, the strength value of the black dragon of Crete is only in the early 20s. In addition, black tentacle is summoned directly from the sea water, and the maintenance time is greatly increased. For a while, the chimera beast couldn't break free. He couldn't break free, and Levin's chance came. He swung the arcane sword, attached ice arrow to it, and then pierced the body of the chimera beast one by one along the gaps between the tentacles. The chimera is a terrifying monster with strong resilience and magic resistance. When ordinary wizards fight it, they often fall into the dilemma that ordinary magic cannot break the defense, and the damage caused by powerful magic cannot keep up with the recovery speed. Even if you are strong enough and can suppress the opponent for a while, you will still be dragged down in a long war of attrition. But Levin's series of tactics completely avoided the chimera's advantages. He did not use direct attack spells throughout the process, but used spells such as Black Tentacle and Ice Arrow to cause physical and elemental attacks, which completely prevented the chimera's magic resistance from being used. He also took advantage of the environmental characteristics of the seaside battle and used Black Tentacles to restrain the chimera beast for a long time. Finally, used the arcane sword enchanted with Ice Arrow to bleed the chimera beast one by one. No matter how strong the chimeraman's recovery power is, it can't withstand such torture. The smuggler who called himself Salamander was almost frightened when he saw this. He has never seen a wizard single-handedly subdue him in one encounter. For such a powerful wizard, he was definitely no match for him. If he succeeded in killing the chimera, his own life would be in vain. Wanting to understand this, he raised his wand, intending to launch a sneak attack on Levin to support the chimera. But Zilly stood up at the right time. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." The girl stepped forward and waved her left hand, dragon breath technique. A blazing flame burst out towards the salamander. "Make him a real salamander." Of course the smuggler knows that he is not a real salamander. The curse he chanted immediately turned into iron armor curse, which barely blocked the breath. But Zilly was unyielding and slashed with his sword with his right hand, knocking the smuggler staggering. "Damn little girl, try this trick from me." Seeing that the opponent was approaching fiercely, the smuggler opened another package, and dozens of Cornish elves flew out, all heading towards Shirley's face. But Zilly made no move to resist and dispel them at all, as if the elves didn't exist, and the sword edge never left the enemy. She is naturally confident in doing this. The elves wanted to pounce on her and tear her beautiful grey hair. Unexpectedly, each of them seemed to have hit an invisible ice wall. Not only could they not touch Zilly, they themselves were almost frozen. 5 or 6 elves had their wings frozen and fell from the sky. But the scarier thing is yet to come. As the elves continued to harass, from time to time an elf would be swallowed up by a sudden fire. But the source of the fire could not be found. It is exactly the effect of elemental scream. The elf here had nothing to do with Zilly, and the smuggler over there also suffered several injuries from Zilly's continuous sword attacks. It's not that he didn't want to use magic spells to counterattack, but every time he cast a spell, the opponent's free left hand would shoot Alder's seal in front of his face, knocking him off balance and making him completely unable to cast spells. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore. He realized that he could not defeat the two auras in front of him with his own strength. What else is there to say? Run away quickly. After using iron armor curse to fend off another enemy attack, the smuggler distanced himself. Now that there are no other magical creatures in my body, Wang knows, I can directly apparate. The smuggler figured this out and started twisting. The black mist is also swirling around. It is the precursor of apparition. Phantom transfer. Dimensional anchor. The smuggler was halfway through his apparition, and a powerful force instantly enveloped the nearby space and sealed it. The movement of disembodiment seemed to hit a solid concrete wall, knocking the smuggler back hard. Caught off guard, the smuggler flipped over and fell to the ground. Just then, Siri took a step forward, cut off his right hand with a sword, and took away the wand. At this time, the female witcher turned around and looked at the person who had just used the dimensional anchor. Levin was holding the arcane sword, and Shiran was walking towards her. "Where's the chimera?" she asked. Levin didn't answer and pointed behind him. There, a huge monster corpse fell on the beach, motionless. Shirai could see that the monster's body was covered with dense wounds from sword blades. There were more than 30 that could be seen at a glance, and each wound was surrounded by condensation of frost. This terrifying monster with only one kill record really died in Levin's hands. Chapter 89. Seeing that Siri had subdued the smuggler, Levin took out a rope and cast an activation spell on it. The activated rope swam to the smuggler's side like a snake, and then tied him up tightly. "What should we do with him next?" Siri asked. "Find a way to notify the Auror." Levin didn't have much else to do with it. Then he took out a stack of letter pads, tore off a piece of paper, wrote a paragraph and burned it. This was given to him by Tonks for emergency contact with her. When she receives the news, she will naturally rush here. Capturing a smuggler, especially if the smuggler is carrying something as dangerous as a chimera, of course it is better to give such credit to one's own people. At this moment, a pink bird suddenly flew in the sky. "It's that evil bird just now." Levin watched the evil bird fly above him, opening and closing its mouth, as if he wanted to tell her something, but he couldn't make a sound because of the silence spell. The hurried little look made Levin laugh for a while. But he could also see that the little guy had something to say to him, so I immediately established a spiritual link with it. Then I learned the news from the little guy. After he left, several strange people appeared out of thin air. Appearing out of thin air? It's apparition, right? Is the person here an accomplice of the smugglers? Or an Auror? After learning the news, Levin arranged for Siri to stay and look at the bodies of the smugglers and the chimera beast, and he hurriedly ran in the direction of the hypnotic pattern. The evil bird also landed on Levin's shoulder in a swaggering manner, and hitched a ride openly. However, Levin did not notice anyone else near the hypnotic pattern. Then he discovered that there were 3 more 617 people sleeping soundly inside the hypnotic pattern. Levin recognized their outfits. Tonks had worn the same outfit. It's actually an Auror. Levin was surprised and a little dumbfounded at the same time. When they came, I hadn't informed Tonks yet. Who called proud here? Just when he was wondering, 7 more Aurors apparat in front of him. The Aurors saw their colleagues lying on the ground at a glance. With Levin observing their colleagues, but they didn't consider Levin a suspect, because Levin had put down his masked scarf at this time. What they saw was an underage wizard. Kid, don't stay there, come here quickly, an Auror shouted a warning to him, come up behind us. I suspect there are. Before they even finished speaking, the group of people also lay down on the ground and fell asleep unconsciously. This time it was good, the hypnotic pattern slept a group of its own people again, and once again scored 7 kills. Later, Levin heard a male voice in the distance, seemingly calling him. Levin walked along the sound and saw a middle-aged wizard standing under the cliff waving to him, wearing a little witch on him. The middle-aged wizard looked crazy, a little cross-eyed, with marshmallow-like white hair hanging on his shoulders, and the tassels on his hat hanging straight in front of his nose. He was wearing an egg-yellow robe with a dazzling color. There was a gold chain hanging around his neck, with a strange symbol flashing on it, which looked like a triangular eye. Levin recognized it at a glance, and it was the symbol of the Deathly Hallows. The little witch next to him seemed to be his daughter, with sloppy light blonde hair, carrot-shaped earrings and a necklace made of butterbeer bottle corks. Upon closer inspection, she is also a cute girl, but under the cover of the weird temperament inherited from her father, she doesn't look so conspicuous. Hey kid, you just saw a Gobashjit there, right? As soon as Levin passed by, he was grabbed by the middle-aged wizard and asked questions, but this question made him confused. What is a Gobashjit? It is a terrible monster that can devour souls. Dad always thought that Cornelius Fudge raised one to eliminate dissidents. The little girl explained to her father, with an ethereal and beautiful tone. The one on the beach should be wild. That monster is more terrifying than I imagined. It swallowed up the souls of an entire team of Aurors. Did you just see what it looked like? The wizard also said with interest. Sorry, I didn't see anything. Levin explained with a headache, those Aurors are not dead. Unexpectedly, these words made the wizard even more excited. Yes, yes. A Gobashjit will only devour the souls of its victims, and their bodies will not die. Don't worry, kid, I have reported the situation to the Ministry of Magic. A full 10 Aurors died on the spot, and they will provide further support. No, you still want to deliver it. Levin opened his mouth, not knowing what to say. Should he sigh that his hypnosis pattern is too powerful? He was caught off guard and knocked over an Auror team. But the top priority is to cancel the spell as soon as possible to avoid causing further trouble. Just when he was hurriedly cutting off the spell, waves of space fluctuations appeared around me again. About 30 or 40 people descended nearby through apparition, all of them wearing Auror uniforms. About half the Auror office is here. It's no wonder, that was the sacrifice of 10 Aurors. The entire Great Yin Wizarding world only has a population of tens of thousands. The total number of Aurors is only over 100, this suddenly reduces almost 1/10, who can bear this? The leader of the Auror sect is a man with a square face and frowning brows. As soon as he appeared, he rushed to find the middle-aged wizard. Time is urgent, Xenophilius, tell me where the sacrifice teams are. Even when facing the head of the Auror gate, the middle-aged wizard known as Xenophilius should not be crazy and promoted his, a Gobashjit theory. And Levin spotted Tonks among the Aurors at a glance. Sister Tonks. He immediately went up to her and told her the whole story. Otherwise, the fun will not end well if it gets too big. I knew it was you who did it, Levin. Tonks patted his shoulder hard and smiled. I understood this when I found that the address you gave was the same as the address where the Aurors departed. Except you, who else could cause such a thing? Then, she hurriedly found her boss and explained the situation. Soon, the Aurors sent people to rescue their colleagues who had been sleeping for a long time. The smugglers were also deported to the Ministry of Magic, but because of the previous mistake, there were too many Aurors on missions, and many Aurors were idle. In line with the guiding ideology of come and come, they were not in a hurry to go back to work in the ministry, but pointed around the chimera beast. This is actually a real chimera. This is the first time I have seen such a creature. Look at its head, it looks exactly like a lion. It's so weird to have such a head with the body of a sheep. It actually has so many holes in its body. The person who killed it must have been too cruel. You are mistaken. I heard that chimera not only has strong magic resistance, but also has an amazing recovery speed from wounds. This is the correct way to kill chimera. I heard that the Chimramon has only been killed once in history. In this case, the person who killed the Chimramon should also have set a record. The Aurors were talking a lot, not hiding their surprise that someone could kill the chimera. At this time, Tonks happily pushed Levin out. Haha, you are right. My brother, Levin Green, is the second person in history to successfully kill a chimera. He is also the first person to kill a chimera without being harmed. People. And his classmate, Cyril Lilian Lun. Together with my brother, she killed the chimera beast and captured the smuggler who brought the chimera beast, successfully averting a potential crisis. She introduced Levin to every colleague she met and made no secret of her pride. Levin naturally greeted everyone politely and told them, Sister Tonks taught me well. It's not like you can brag about each other in business. With Tonks' introduction and his incredible achievements, Levin was immediately regarded as one of their own by the Aurors. Many people also kindly invited him to graduate and join the Aurors, thinking that his performance was very suitable for this profession. As for the fact that a whole team of Aurors fell asleep on the beach for no apparent reason, it was left to chance. I can't help it, this is really embarrassing. Afterwards, Levin went to meet two people who reported the crime. The middle-aged wizard is named Xenophilius Lovegood, the editor-in-chief of the Quibbler magazine. The girl next to him is his daughter, Luna Lovegood, who is about to become Levin's junior schoolmate. After hearing that Levin, like them, lived in the village of Ottery St. Catchpole, the two even invited Levin to visit. Tonks found Levin before leaving. Don't worry, brother Levin, your achievements this time will not be buried. The female Auror's words were full of excitement. You really did something earth-shattering this time, you killed a chimera. The significance of this thing is much greater than catching a smuggler. Look, you will soon be on the CAI Daily Prophet. I will ask my boss, Lady Proudmoore, to apply for you to be awarded the Order of Merlin. What do you think? Of course, thank you, Sister Tonks. That's all up to you. Levin was also very happy after hearing what Tonks said. If he could successfully hunt down a chimera, his trip would be considered worthwhile. If he could get a Merlin Order medal, it would be like hunting a rabbit in the grass and making a lot of money. At the current rate of progress and strength, it won't be too far to reach the point of establishing a floating city. Levin feels that now is the time to make a name for himself. If you can really get the Order of Merlin, then you will probably have to go to the Ministry of Magic to be awarded the medal. Levin felt that he might be able to take this opportunity to meet Ms. Gianna. Chapter 90. After the business in Cornwall was over, Levin and Ciri returned to the tower with the body of the chimera. By the way, the evil bird also followed Levin back to the tower. Levin named it Circe, after the source of the evil bird, one of the Banshee harpies. In the basement of the tower, Levin began to study the chimera. Since there are almost no records of chimeras being killed by wizards, it is difficult for wizards to conduct research on this dangerous magical creature, and naturally they do not know which parts of their bodies can be used. Originally, Levin thought that the chimera had strong magic resistance, and its skin was naturally the best material for magic resistance. Unexpectedly, after peeling off its skin, I discovered that the peeled skin was similar to the most ordinary goat skin. And the fur on its head is no different from ordinary lion fur. With the death of the chimera, it lost all its magical power and became the purest suture monster. Its head is no different from a normal lion, and its body is exactly like a large goat with its head and tail removed. You can buy one for a few hundred yuan. As for its tail, it is completely the same. Only a normal dragon tail, only this part of the entire chimera can be used. But, how is this possible? Why can these three parts be sewn together to have such terrifying power? So, Levin conducted a complete dissection of the chimera, examining each organ. Finally, he discovered the clue: the heart of a chimera is obviously different from the heart of a goat. Only this part of the entire chimera corpse still contains huge magic power. The heart and mass are the source of the chimera's animal power. Levin probably understands the mechanism of chimeras. Chimera, also called chimera in other worlds, is a chimera monster created by the Dark Wizard, and what unites the three incompatible parts is the heart transformed by black magic. The heart will produce blood with dark magic power, which flows throughout the body of the chimera. It also combines the most evil traits of the three creatures: the greed of the dragon head, the bloodthirsty of the lion, and the vicious stubbornness of the half. Return to the heart and create a new evil calendar. In other words, the essence of chimera's power is the symbol and meaning of the chimera animals that make up it. Now that Chimeraman dies, this transformation cycle disappears, and Chimeraman's strange power disappears. Levin recorded a series of research results, and he was going to write a paper about it and publish it in a magazine related to magical animals. But before that, he needs to use this magic heart to create his first permanent attribute elixir based on the methods he learned when he acquired the Druid inheritance. Levin can make certain changes to the main ingredients of the permanent attribute elixir. He planned to use the heart of the chimera beast to replace the bear paws required in the eternal bear's fortitude elixir. The elixir of bear's toughness increases the durability attribute, and bears can be used as the main material precisely because bears are magical creatures known for their rough skin, thick flesh, and high durability. But in this regard, the chimera beast is completely better. Chimera not only has stronger magic resistance, but also has a rapid recovery ability that is far beyond Xianghei's ability. Moreover, according to the wild ritual obtained that day, as long as the permanent attribute elixir is used in the ritual, Levin can obtain the creature corresponding to the main ingredient of the elixir as the object of wilderness transformation. Levin's first transformation was to choose the chimera. In fact, before that, he was fully qualified to use the griffin's beak to create the eternal eagle's majesty elixir, thereby obtaining the griffin transformation. But after careful consideration, Levin chose to take the eternal bear's toughness elixir first. After all, the durability attribute is the basis of the wild transformation ability. With a large amount of materials collected in the Forbidden Forest and financial support provided by the Philosopher's Stone, Levin effortlessly gathered the necessary materials. Add a small amount of chimera heart slices. Levin brewed the first vial of eternal bear's toughness elixir in his basement. Next is the preparation for the wilderness ritual. Compared with the long-term tedious preparation and luck of Animagus, wild ritual only requires simple ritual preparation. Hearing that Levin was preparing to experiment with the new Animagus method, Hermione and Ciri expressed their wish to watch. The time Levin chose for the ceremony was late at night, when the moon was at its highest. In most legends, the moon has a direct relationship with the power of beasts. Moonlight can make beast-turned human beings surge with strength. During the full moon, This power reaches its maximum, and werewolves, as well as other lycanthropes, transform back and are forced to transform. This is why the Druid society that specializes in wilderness transformation is called the Moon Society. The ceremony took place under the huge oak tree next to the tower. This is the tree into which Levin invested the most natural power when establishing his territory. It is also the core node of the natural power of the entire region. Before waiting for the moon to reach its predetermined high point, the three of them sat under the tree and chatted casually. The first recorded animagus was Falco Esalon in ancient Greece, and his transformation was a falcon. Even in the midst of small talk, Ms. Know-It-All still never forgets to perform magic spells for her companions. I think I've heard of this name. By the way, I've seen him on the chocolate frog card. Shirley thought for a moment before answering. Haha, you can only learn history from chocolate frog cards. When talking about this kind of knowledge, Hermione could finally maintain a sense of superiority towards Siri. During this period of time together, Zilly's strong performance put her under great pressure. Shirley dismissed this level of irony and turned to ask when, Levin, if you succeed, will you report it to the Ministry of Magic? Hermione was also worried about this. I checked the information and found that unreported animagus is illegal. Once caught, they will be imprisoned in Azkaban. Of course not. Levin said matter-of-factly, my animagus may be a little special, and I won't reveal it to anyone in a short time. Euro, please give me flowers. Euro, oh, that's it. Then you have to be careful when you transform. Hermione didn't raise any objections. After spending a long time with Levin, she gradually became accustomed to Levin's deviance. Geniuses are always beyond the comprehension of ordinary people. Speaking of which, I plan to submit the article Anatomical Analysis of the Chimera and the Formation Mechanism of its Dark Magic Power to the Annual of Magical Beasts tomorrow. Levin suddenly asked Hermione, after all, you participated in the writing of that paper, are you still unwilling to eat it? Forget it. The girl shook her head, I just handed you the equipment and made some notes. This kind of trivial work doesn't deserve a name at all. But... Levin wanted to persuade him again. Next time. Hermione said seriously, next time, when I can actually participate in the experiment and help you, I will still be in trouble with you if you don't add my name. Hermione also has her own dignity. After hearing this, Zilly looked at her with admiration. Well, that's a pity. Levin nodded and said quietly, I forwarded this paper to Mr. Newt Scamander through Professor Dumbledore. I heard from Mr. Scamander that this paper there is a high probability of winning a prize. Newt Scamander. Hermione became excited when she heard the name. Is that the author of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them? Of course. Who else has that name besides him? Wow, I heard that he is the greatest magi-zoologist of our time. If he said that, it is probably true. Hermione was envious. Award from a professional journal, it's great. Coupled with the Order of Merlin medal that Tonks promised, if this trend continues, Levin will probably leave with full honors like Dumbledore after graduation. There won't be a single student like this at Hogwarts for decades. Levin. She suddenly said, why did you choose me as your friend in the first place? Senior Cyrilla is good at sports and has great strength. Cyrilla, I guess you have a good eye, and I am an ordinary wizard who only studies hard. I am a little clever at most. Levin touched Hermione's fluffy hair and comforted, no, you are very talented and the smartest witch I have ever seen. Even Ciri has to admit this. Cyrilla turned her head when she heard this and did not refute. You, don't have to compare with me. My situation is special. But in the entire Hogwarts, you are already better than 99% of the people. You have your own talent, what you need is enough time to accumulate. At this moment, the moon happened to rise to the highest point in the sky. Under the guidance of the giant oak tree, the moonlight swayed down like a mercury waterfall, illuminating the open space in front of the oak tree. Is the wilderness ritual about to begin? Chapter 91. Levin ended the chat, walked into the gathering moonlight, and took out a small crystal vial. It is filled with golden eternal bear's tough elixir. Under the worried looks of Hermione and Ciri, he opened the cork bottle cap and drank the elixir in one gulp. The temperature of the liquid was cold, but when it was poured into the mouth, it was burning, and it quickly burned from the throat to the stomach. It's like drinking a bottle of vodka in one gulp. Then, the pain spread throughout the body. At the same time, under the illumination of the moonlight, the power of nature continued to gather in Levin's body, healing the burning pain. Levin can feel that as the natural power fills up, his heart begins to beat violently, and there are two hearts. The other heart is made entirely of natural forces, that seems to be the core of wild transformation. But because of the different beating frequencies, Levin's eardrums vibrated violently and his brain was rapidly congested with blood. Finally, the beating frequency of the heart was consistent, and the image of the creature he transformed came together in his mind. Normally, at this time, Levin would need to make a 0, 5, or 3 choice among the animals he has seen. But at this moment, the power from the elixir made a brand new image appear in my mind, Chimera or Chimera. You choose Chimera as your wilderness form. Since you have conducted in-depth research on Chimera, you fully understand the transformation mechanism of Chimera. Therefore, you can choose any 3 animals as the Chimera of Chimera. Composition, you can only choose from common animals including dragons. The animal symbolism will be the source of the Chimera's POWER1 yet, I just wrote a paper, but there is still a surprise. In other words, you don't have to choose the standard Chimera combination of lion, goat, and dragon, but choose other animals. In just the blink of an eye, Yewen had a good idea. You have finished choosing. Due to the high compatibility of the transformation you chose, your chimera transformation is a 4 chimera. You can adjust the species factor ratio in the chimera at will. Levin exhaled, closed his eyes tightly, and concentrated on his first wilderness transformation. He could clearly feel that his arms, legs, and whole body were undergoing slow changes. The muscles, organs, and structures in the body are also changing, although this process is very slow. Even the clothes on Levin's body gradually integrated into his body. He remembered the precautions of the wilderness ceremony. The first transformation does not need to be too fast, and the body must fully feel the changes. I don't know how long it took, but Levin felt that his arms and feet had turned into strange claws. My shoulder blades and tail vertebrae began to tingle, as if something was growing. The glass bottle in Levin's hand fell to the ground, and Hermione hurriedly took it away and looked at Levin nervously. In her sight, the boy's hands had disappeared, replaced by sharp claws, but his lower limbs had turned into the claws of a raptor. Is it a beast? Or a bird? Hermione kept guessing, it can't be a Stitch monster. However, Shirai suddenly thought of something and stared at Levin with burning eyes. Levin had no time to care about others. He was still transforming, and the whole process was as slow as childbirth. Although he has never given birth to a child, he feels that there is no difference. After an unknown amount of time, his beardless chin and cheeks sprouted wisps of mane. There is a pair of things like chicken wings on the shoulders, there are more black and white markings on the back, a long tail also grows on its butt. He looks extremely ugly now, as if he had several animals put together. Slowly, hair and feathers spread outward from his limbs. Finally, the head also changed, the ears on both sides turned into round ears on the top of the head, the upper lip was split, and several long beards grew out of the lips. Eventually, it turned into the head of a young male lion with a sparse mane, except that a pair of tiger teeth were long on each side, and there were 2 poison glands on the back that no one could see. The main outline of the body is also that of a lion, but the fur color is darker than that of ordinary lions. The back is black and white stripes, and the wings on the back are full of brown and black feathers. The 5 claws on the forelimbs are long and sharp, capable of both cutting and digging. The lower part of the hind limbs is completely the claws of a raptor. As for the tail, there is no hair at all, replaced by smooth snake scales. What kind of animal is this? Hermione's face turned pale when she saw the monster in front of her. I've never seen such a magical creature. It's a chimera. This time it was Shirai who gave the answer. Chimera originally means chimera, but the chimera Levin transformed into is not a standard combination. When Hermione heard this, she immediately understood what was going on. Apart from being shocked by Levin, he was also surprised that Siri could actually see what was going on. Obviously, in terms of knowledge reserve, I am the one who has more knowledge, he is indeed a Ravenclaw. Siri won't tell Hermione that chimeras also exist in the world of Witchers. It's just that in the world of Harry Potter, chimeras are all descended from the original chimeras. However, the manufacturing technology was lost, and there was no new dark wizard to create the chimera, so naturally only the original combination remained. But in the world of Witchers, there are still warlocks making new chimeras. So there are always different chimera combinations appearing. The most common is a combination of a deer-headed demon, a griffin, and a pterodactyl. Understanding the species Levin transformed into, Hermione was finally able to carefully observe the chimera. Although the transformation process is quite weird, but when it was all Harry, in Hermione's eyes, this huge guy looked inexplicably majestic and beautiful. It is tall, standing 1.8 meters long. Not including the tail, which is nearly 3 meters long, the tail is 1.5 meters long, and its single wings are also 2 meters long. It has the head and body of a lion, the wings and hind limbs of an eagle, the coat and forelimbs of a badger, the fangs and tail of a snake. Wait, aren't these the 4 symbolic animals of the 4 major houses of Hogwarts? Good guy, it turns out that Levin put these 4 animals together, and he really had an idea. I saw this newborn chimera staggering out and rushing out. At first I was not used to it, and I stumbled a lot. But he can quickly run quickly. Running, the chimera spread its wings and flapped, then slowly flew into the sky. According to true aerodynamics, given the weight of the chimera, even if its wings are 5 times longer, it may not be able to fly. But Newton couldn't control matters of magic, not to mention that Lord Cow in the Harry Potter world was also a wizard and the top alchemist. Anyway, after several attempts, Levin successfully flew twice over the tower before Chiron landed in front of the 2 of them. At this time, most of the night had passed since Levin started to transform. Let's go, the sun is coming out soon, I will take you to watch the sunrise. Levin's voice rang in the hearts of the 2 of them, which of you comes first? At the same time, the chimera slowly squatted down, spreading its wings on both sides. Miss Granger was worried about you just now. I'll let her go this time. Siri lifted Hermione up and let her ride on top of the chimera's huge body. Levin stood up and then fully unfolded his wings, which were a full 4 or 5 meters long. Hurry up, let's take off. Levin ordered. Hermione nodded, quickly grabbed the chimera's neck, and lovingly tucked her head into the warm mane. Almost at the same time, Levin waved his wings, and Shirai next to 0.7 felt a strong wind hitting her face, and couldn't help but take a few steps back. The wind and clouds are surging, and the sand and rocks are flying. Levin spread his wings and flew high into the woods, flying over the village of St. Catchpole. Hermer and Circe seemed to sense something, and flew out of their nests one after another, came to Chimera, and flew with him. Looking down from high in the sky, the entire village of St. Catchpole is unobstructed. But Levin was not satisfied yet. He continued upward and finally passed through the clouds. The sea of a clouds was like a carpet penetrated by a cone, leaving an opening with light. Hermione raised her head and looked to the sky. In the field of vision, the rising sun reflected the golden red sea of a clouds. She hugged Levin's neck tightly and looked at the wonderful scenery of nature with blurred eyes. Chapter 92. While Levin was brazenly trying out his new wilderness transformation in the village of St. Catchpole, at the Ministry of Magic, a debate was going on about him. This is a first-class medal, Ms. Proudmoore. This is the highest honor that Sir Merlin can award. Have we ever had such a precedent? Disputes caused by magical animals not knowing how to hide their bodies and threatening muggles. We have seen many, but is it too exaggerated to reward the wizard involved with the Order of Merlin, first class? The chairman of the Merlin Order of Merlin Medal Awards Committee at the Weisengamot Conference raised this issue when communicating with the applicant Gina. Of course there are examples, and there are quite a few. Gina was well prepared and spoke unhurriedly. She has always had this character to do her best when she wants to do something. For this reason, she has already found a circle in advance. The most typical one is the Ilfracombe incident, which is also a major event in the history of the Ministry of Magic. It happened in 1932. At that time, a naughty common Welsh green dragon attacked a group of sunbathers in Ilfracombe, Devon, England. The Talk family who were travelling there prevented the casualties from happening. And the largest amnesia spell of the 20th century was used on the residents there. Subsequently, their whole family was awarded the Order of Merlin, first class, and the 15th recipient was the then Minister of Magic, Hector Foley. 25 years after this incident happened, Norwell Tonk was also awarded a first-class medal, but he did not save as many people as the Talk family. He was saved from the claws of a manticore and a manticore. Save a muggle child and die for it. If you want, I can list more relevant examples. It has always been our tradition to award medals to wizards who save muggles from magical creatures, isn't it? But that's a first-level medal, not a second-level medal, not a third-level medal. The chairman of the awards committee was still a little reluctant, and even Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic beside him, had some doubts. But that's a chimera. Gina had already anticipated this situation, so she came up with a second reason. I don't need to say more about the danger of this kind of magical beast. If the chimera beast is allowed to run rampant on the beach, I can't imagine how many muggles will die and how much trouble will be caused, it's even possible. Resulting in the Auror sacrifice. After hearing this, Fudge nodded repeatedly. According to Tonk's report, Levin did not take the initiative to hunt the chimera, nor did the smugglers have to release the beast because of his aggressiveness. According to the files of the Ministry of Magic, Levin and Ciri were just going for a walk on the beach. They happened to encounter a crazy dark wizard trying to attack muggles with an artifact creature, and they had to take action. Gina continued, in addition, we all know that chimeras are known in the magic world as being powerful and difficult to kill. The last wizard who killed chimeras was the unlucky guy in ancient Greece. After killing the chimera, he was exhausted from the long battle and fell off his Pegasus to his death. This is basically the same as dying together. But Levin Green is different. He killed the chimera himself without getting hurt. This is something that no wizard has been able to do for thousands of years. The most important thing is that he belongs to the magical world of Yin Kingdom and has a close relationship with Tonks, the new Auror who made a big splash last year. After hearing this, Cornelius Fudge nodded repeatedly, yes, killing the chimera is of great significance. From this point of view, it is fair to award a first-class medal. If you are really afraid of indiscriminate awards, you are completely can he award his partner with a second-level medal. Seeing this scene, Gina was not surprised. As for the Minister of Magic, she had already figured out the details of him. She knew very well that in the eyes of the minister, it didn't matter whether her words were justified or not. The important thing is the extraordinary meaning behind this matter, and Levin is barely half of his own people. This would be a great benefit to the ministry's publicity efforts. A young wizard from the Yin Kingdom single-handedly killed the chimera, completing a feat that countless wizards had not accomplished for thousands of years, and he was trained by the Ministry of Magic of the Yin Kingdom. How nice does this sound to say? How shameless is it? Since there was precedent and the minister's endorsement, the chairman of the awards committee finally agreed to propose in the awards committee about awarding Sir Levin Green-Melling, first class medal, a discussion on the issue of awarding Cyril Renland the Order of Merlin, second class. In the awards committee, usually when an issue is raised, it means it is passed. This is just a matter of going through one more formality in the remaining time. Gina told Tonks the news, and the Tonks family were happy for Levin. Later, the Tonks invited Levin, Ciri, and Hermione to visit their home, and enthusiastically took them to buy dresses for the award ceremony. If Levin hadn't repeatedly said that he was rich, they would have even paid for the dress. In the eyes of this good couple, since there are no elders in Levin and Ciri's family, they have the obligation to guide these two poor children on how to deal with the upper-class society of wizard society. In this regard, the young lady from the Black family, Anda Tonks, has the most say. The day when the awards will be announced is coming soon. The Tonks family personally led the three Levins to apparate to the Ministry of Magic. However, after the apparition, several people did not appear in the Ministry of Magic, but instead appeared on a desolate side street. There were only a few shabby-looking offices, a bistro, and a dump truck that was almost overflowing. It's hard to believe that the entrance to the Ministry of Magic is actually here. We are here, kids. Don't worry, this is actually near Westminster Avenue in London. The entrance is placed here because it is more hidden and difficult to be discovered by muggles. Mrs. Tonks introduced the three little wizards. In fact, our Ministry of Magic is located just downstairs from Whitehall, the center of the British Muggle government. Normally, we can enter the Ministry of Magic through the flow network. Tonks walked in front, leading the way. But today we are here to attend the ceremony, so we have to go through the visitor entrance, that's right here. She was pointing at an old red phone booth with a few pieces of glass missing and a wall behind it that had been painted over. The phone court looks small, but a very clever traceless extension spell has been cast inside, and the internal area can always accommodate the 320 people who enter. Tonks stood by the phone, typing in the numbers as she recalled. As the dial whirred back to its original position, a woman's cold voice sounded in the phone booth, but the voice did not come from the phone. It was loud and clear, as if an invisible woman was standing there. Around them. Welcome to the Ministry of Magic, please state your name and shield. We are here to attend the award ceremony, 6 of us in total, Tonks replied towards the empty glass. Nymphadora Tonks and 2 of her family members are here to accept the award. The winner presenting the award, and a companion observing the ceremony. Thank you, the cold female voice said. Guest, please pick up the badge and pin it in front of your clothes. Then, a silver medal slipped out of the metal chute used to withdraw coins from a normal phone booth and fell to King Tonks. The female aura pinned it to her chest. Then the female voice said again, visitors of the Ministry of Magic, you are required to be checked and register your wand at the security desk. The security desk is located at the end of the main hall. The floor of the phone booth suddenly trembled and they sank slowly into the ground, like a Muggle elevator. Slowly, Levin could see nothing and could only hear the dull grinding noise of the phone booth as it descended through the ground. When the bright light hit Levin's eyes, they stopped falling. The Ministry of Magic hopes you have a good day, the female voice said. The phone booth door popped open and everyone filed out. Then, the 3 Xiao Gang net masters saw the glorious Ministry of Magic for the first time. Chapter 93. Seeing the scene in front of him, Levin had to sigh. Apart from Hogwarts, no other place embodies the magical beauty of this world better than the Ministry of Magic in front of you. They stood at the end of a long, splendid hall, with a polished dark wooden floor and a peacock blue ceiling inlaid with sparkling golden symbols, which were constantly moving and changing, like a huge overhead bulletin board. In the middle of the foyer is a fountain. In the middle of a circular pool stands a group of pure gold statues, which are larger than life. The tallest among them is a noble wizard, holding his wand high and pointing directly at the sky. Surrounding him were a beautiful witch, a centaur, a goblin, and a house elf. Centaurs, goblins, and house elves all looked up at the 2 wizards with admiration. Shining jets of water spurted out from the top of the wizard's wand, from the centaur's arrow, from the tip of the goblin's hat, and from the 2 ears of the house elf. The walls on all sides are paneled with glossy dark wooden boards, and many gilded fireplaces are embedded in the wooden boards. Every few seconds, with a soft popping sound, a wizard suddenly appeared from a fireplace on the left. On the right, there are several people queuing up in front of each fireplace, waiting to leave. When passing by, Tonks looked very happy. She happily greeted everyone she knew and introduced District 2 who was about to be honored. Yes, I brought them to receive the Order of Merlin. Levin could see envy and jealousy in every wizard's eyes. It seems that the wizards at the Ministry of Magic value the Order of Merlin very highly. The Order of Merlin was originally an organization founded by Merlin in the Middle Ages. Merlin believed that wizards should coexist peacefully with Muggles, so the knights established rules prohibiting the use of magic against Muggles. After the founding of the Wizengamot, the first medal was awarded in the 15th century, named the Order of Merlin in memory of Merlin. By the way, Merlin graduated from Hogwarts as a Slytherin, so the green ribbon representing Slytherin is used on the Order of Merlin first class. Wizards from the Ministry of Magic and members of high society are particularly fond of the Order of Merlin. For the former, this is a brilliant addition to their resume and a symbol of their future. For the latter, this is a manifestation of their noble status. Levin himself doesn't care much about this stuff. For him, knowledge is the real power. Ciri is a visitor from Otherworld, and she has no feeling at all about this. She is also the heir of the ancient blood, the princess of Sintra, and the daughter of the Emperor of Nilfgaard. Is she proud? It's just that considering a future career requires enough fame and connections, Levin is happy with it. At the security checkpoint, they successfully passed the wand test. Then, they passed through another door and came to a smaller hall. There were at least 20 elevators blocked by exquisite golden fence doors. Tonks picked a booth with fewer people in line and quickly entered the elevator. The elevator door slammed shut and began to climb slowly. Every time you reach a floor, the elevator will stop once and people will come in and out. The 5th level has arrived, the International Magical Trade Standards Association, the International Magical Law Office and the British chapter of the International Federation of Wizards. In the elevator, the same female voice as in the previous phone booth announced the address without emotion. We're here. The 5th floor is the territory of the Department of International Magical Cooperation. The same auditorium is used for awarding the Order of Merlin and for diplomatic cooperation. Tonks walked out of the elevator first and led everyone forward. The sun shone in through the windows in the corridor, bringing warmth to the corridor. But that's exactly what's wrong. Are we still underground? Hermione asked the key question. Where does this sunlight come from? These windows are enchanted. Tonks explained, the magic maintenance department decides what weather we have every day. Last time we had a hurricane for 2 months because they wanted to raise wages. 17 The auditorium where the Ministry of Magic holds major events is at the end of the corridor. When they entered the auditorium, there were already hundreds of Wizengamot members wearing various colored attires, as well as recipients of the Order of Merlin, gathering in the audience in 2s and 3s to chat. This is the grand occasion when the first class medal is awarded. If there is only a 2nd or 3rd level medal, then at most a few members of the Wizengamot will come to confer the medal on you, and then there will be more than 10 or 20 wizards who are weekly medal recipients to come and cheer you up. After all, there are tricks in the issuance of medals, and there are especially many second and third level medals, so the gold content is naturally greatly reduced. The moment they entered, the members of the jazz band in the audience who came to watch the ceremony cast friendly eyes on several people. Among these people, Levin also saw many acquaintances. For example, Dumbledore, who was sitting on the rostrum high in the auditorium, was chatting with an old man about his age. As soon as he saw Levin, he pointed him out to the old man next to him. For example, the Dean of Ravenclaw, Professor Filius Flivy, who will be honored today. Levin and Chirico are both students of his college, and he has been looking at them kindly since they entered the door. There was also a witch whom Levin had never seen before but recognized at first sight. She wore a gold-rimmed blue-purple cloak, a white dress, and purple high heels, with beautiful blonde hair and a beautiful face. Even when they met for the first time, Levin could tell her name, Gina Proudmoore. There is no way, even in another world, this girl still wears the same clothes. It would be strange not to recognize her. When Levin saw Gianna, she saw them too. Gina nodded to Tonks, then looked at Levin with interest, as if she recognized him. Under the leadership of Tonks, several people sat down in the first row of the auditorium. Levin met some leaders in his previous life and liked to deliver some nasty and long speeches on important occasions. Cornelius Fudge, as the Minister of Magic, a member of the Wizengamot, and a recipient of the Order of Merlin First Class, also spoke on the podium of the auditorium for more than an hour. The speech routines are naturally the same. First, of course, I will explain the origin and status of the Order of Merlin, and review the glorious past of the Ministry of Magic and the Order of Merlin. Then it led to the fact that the British magical world under his rule is currently in a prosperous state. Finally, I would like to thank all sectors of society for their support of the award. Before Levin fell completely asleep, the talk of the awards finally came. But Fudge has another trick up his sleeve. After praising Levin and Siri, Fudge attributed this to the strong training of Hogwarts and the strong support of the Ministry of Magic. A brief translation, Fudge shamelessly rubbed the honor of the two of them, and because he was afraid of being criticized, he dragged Dumbledore along. Finally, before Levin hit him with a fireball in the face, Fudge finally, no money for it, started the awards ceremony. Dumbledore came on stage at the right time and waved to the two of them. In his hands were two exquisite boxes. I am honored to announce that Mr. Levin Green successfully participated in subduing the Dark Wizard who tried to attack Muggles on the beach in Cornwall, successfully killed the adult chimera released by the Dark Wizard, and protected the people on the beach. A Muggle, he upheld the Wizarding Statute of Secrecy and was awarded the Order of Merlin, First-Class Medal. Miss Cyril Lillian successfully participated in subduing the Dark Wizards who tried to attack Muggles on the beach in Cornwall, protected the Muggles on the beach, and upheld the Wizarding Statute of Secrecy. Awarded the Order of Merlin, Second Class. Please invite the winners to come up to the stage to receive their awards. Cornelius Fudge announced cheerfully, as if he had received a medal. Dumbledore opened the box, and Fudge took out a gold medal with a green ribbon and brought it to Levin's neck. Another second-level medal with a purple ribbon was placed around Zilly's neck. There were bursts of clicking sounds. The scene was permanently recorded by the media present. Chapter 94. Levin and Siri, carrying medals like puppets, stood in a row with him and Dumbledore at the greeting of Minister of Magic Fudge, and began to let the photographers take pictures naturally. After the awards were given, the two stepped down from the stage. Dumbledore came over, patted Levin on the shoulder, and said kindly, "Congratulations, Mr. Green, you did a great job this time. You should be the youngest holder of the first-class medal of the Order of Merlin. And you, Miss Cyrilla, I didn't expect that you still have such a tacit understanding outside of the Quidditch field. Thank you, Professor, it's just a coincidence. In such a dangerous situation, anyone will take action." Levin thanked you politely and said in a humble tone, "Besides, Siri also helped me a lot. It's just that when the road is rough, we draw our swords to help." Zilly also said calmly. "You are so humble, Mr. Levin Green, Miss Cyril Lillian. Oh, I can also call you Sir now. By the way, Sir Green, I heard Principal Dumbledore talk about it before. If I pass you, your academic performance in school will be very good, right?" The old man who was beside Dumbledore also came forward, his words full of admiration for Levin. "You are Mr. Newt's commander." Just when Levin was wondering who the other party was, Professor Levi, who happened to come over to congratulate him, told him, so the short professor proudly showed off to him his favorite student. "Yes, Levin is the most talented and hard-working student I have ever seen. I think he is now almost as effective as an adult wizard in terms of the effect of a spell. In fact, Mr. Green has outstanding achievements in other areas." Newt's commander nodded and inadvertently pointed out another startling fact. "I have read Mr. Green's anatomy research paper on the chimera. I have to say that you put forward a quite bold hypothesis, but the whole argumentation process is very rigorous, which makes people have to admire. You are indeed born with good for research." Upon hearing this, Professor Flitwick looked at Levin with shocked eyes, as if to say, "You boy, how many surprises do I still have that I don't know about?" "Ah. Hello Mr. Commander, Professor Dumbledore and Professor Flitwick. I'm very sorry, but can I do an exclusive interview with our heroes?" A sharp and exaggerated voice sounded, with a contrived and unpleasant tone. Levin followed the sound. It was a witch in a magenta robe. Her hair was made into delicate, stiff, and weird curls. It looked particularly awkward when paired with her big chin face. She wore a pair of jewelry-encrusted robes. He was wearing glasses, and he was holding a crocodile leather handbag with his fat fingers. His nails were 2 inches long and were very red. "Fee, oh, hello Miss Skeeter," Flitwick greeted her and then took the initiative to introduce, "This is Ms. Rita Skeeter, a writer for the Daily Prophet, also from Ravenclaw. Although I have only taught her for 3 years, I was deeply impressed by his writing style." "Thank you. Professor Flitwick, you actually remember me." Rita Skeeter was obviously a little surprised. Through his psychic abilities, Levin could feel that the villain in the original work was deeply moved at this time. Professor Flitwick, this cute little old man, is indeed a great teacher. In this case, Levin also planned to give Professor Leeway some face. Hopefully this interview won't take too long. After saying that, Levin nodded to Flitwick and others, and followed Rita Skeeter to the corner of the auditorium with Shirley. To Levin's surprise, this female reporter, who was known for exaggerating and distorting facts in the original work, did not ask sharp questions and recorded Levin and Shirley's answers truthfully. Levin almost thought she had transitioned. Before coming, Levin was still thinking about using magic to teach her a lesson, but now it seems that there is no need. It seems that Professor Flitwick's face does not only apply to himself. After the interview, Levin was about to go back to the professors when he suddenly saw Tonks and her mother, Ms. Andromeda, walking towards them in a hurry. "So you're here, Levin," the expression on Tonks' face seemed happy. "Come with me quickly, Lady Proudmoore would like to get to know you." "Gianna? What does she want from me?" Before I could find him, the other party came to my door first. This struck Levin as odd. But it just so happened that one of the purposes of Levin's visit today was to get to know her. That's good, at least I don't need to find any excuses. As for Ms. Andromeda, she took Siri back to find Hermione. Miss Granger had been staying with Mr. and Mrs. Tonks. To Levin's surprise, the place where Gina met him was not in the auditorium hall, but in a side hall. Moreover, this was a completely separate meeting between the two of them, and even Tonks stayed at the door of the side hall. There must be something weird in this. At a round table in the side hall, Levin and Gianna sat opposite each other, with 2 desserts and black tea in front of them. "Nice to meet you, Sir Levin Green. I have long heard Tonks say that you are an incredible boy. When I met you today, I realized that she was indeed not exaggerating." As soon as they met, Gianna made no secret of her admiration for Cao Wen. "It's really such an award. In fact, Tonks often mentioned Ms. Proudmoore to me, and her words were full of admiration. I have always admired your name for a long time, but today I discovered that you are better than she said it even more charmingly." Being praised like this by a 12-year-old boy, Gianna couldn't help but cover her mouth and smile. "Look what you said, I am almost 40 years old, and I can be your mother." "Hey, is that so?" Levin pretended to be surprised. "I also wanted to call you Sister Gianna." If someone who knew Levin heard this, they would definitely scold him for being malicious and shameless. A 12-year-old child actually called 36-year-old Gianna sister. But judging from her appearance alone, Gianna does not look like a 30-year-old person. Arcane Mage has many ways to take care of herself. In addition, as a World of Warcraft player in my previous life, I had fantasized about one of Gina's footmen, and calling her sister Gina was already the biggest compromise. If it were in his previous life, he would have chosen to call his wife on the spot. If you ask Levin to call Aunt Gianna, he will definitely not agree. Finally, and most importantly, there is nothing wrong with being cute, but using high charm and charming humans passively is the biggest waste. One of them is deliberately trying to win over each other, and the other is deliberately trying to be cute. The man is affectionate and the concubine is interested. In just a few words, I became familiar with it. The sister and brother shouted, and the topic changed from Tonks to the Chimera Beast. Just when Levin thought the plan was going very smoothly, Gianna suddenly said, "By the way, Brother Levin, I heard from the Aurors at the scene that you suppressed the Chimera's recovery power by bleeding a lot. That's why you left many wounds on it." "Sister Gianna is right," Levin still said in a sweet tone. At this time, Gina's tone became serious. "From the photos at the scene, I noticed that the wounds of the Chimera Beast were accompanied by a large amount of water stains, frost, and even ice. This shows that you wanted to prevent the wound from healing. An ice spell was used, but according to my observations, these traces do not match any known ice spell." Speaking of this, she looked into Levin's eyes, her eyes full of inquiry. "I'm curious, what spell did you use to cause this?" Chapter 95. After hearing this question, Levin broke into a cold sweat. He suddenly realized that the other party seemed to know something. If this is the case, then this unusual proactive meeting seems to have an explanation. She is worthy of being the wise female mage in Warcraft, the trendsetter of fate, Gina. Even in the world of Harry Potter, her performance is still wise and sharp. However, I originally had plans to have a showdown with the opponent. It was just a matter of time. The other party can sense something is wrong, considering that Gianna has always been a kind and sensible person. She basically has no special black spots and is a reliable person. So it's not impossible to have a showdown now. So Levin took a deep breath and said solemnly, "Since Sister Gianna has asked this, she must also have some guesses about it." "That's right, what I used was the power of Ice Arrow. As if he was afraid that the other party would not believe him, Levin grabbed the small table knife on the table and waved it casually. Gina saw frost on the blade. She could feel the familiar monomodal fluctuations brewing between the blades. You can actually attach the power of Ice Arrow to the weapon. It's really an amazing spell-casting skill. Gina couldn't help but sigh. Even she couldn't do this. It's just a small trick, but it's too late to make a fool of yourself in front of my sister. Levin smiled, waved his hand, and cancelled the spell. Then he asked in turn, I'm very curious, how did Sister Gianna discover this? Obviously you didn't even see the body with your own eyes. This is also where Levin is puzzled. Gianna most likely discovered something was wrong from here, but he couldn't figure out where he had exposed his flaw. In this regard, Gianna did not want to hide, perhaps you may not believe it. But the spell you used, Ice Arrow, has actually been my most commonly used spell. As for its magic model, structure, and any possible the variations, effects, possible wounds, etc. I know all the details about the Ice Arrow. Of course, except for the move you just made, I really can't do it. After hearing what Gianna said, Levin immediately believed it. Indeed, Gianna in World of Warcraft is very good at ice element spells. She uses summoning water elemental, blizzard, icicle technique, frost nova, and falling ice technique to perfection. As for Ice Arrow, that's totally her level A. Since Gianna told the truth, Levin did not hide it. Ms. Gianna, I am not surprised by everything you said. In fact, I know more about you than you think. As he spoke, he explained to Cyrilla, his speculations from 11 years ago, everyone's time travel, and his so-called otherworld observation ability. In case the other party didn't believe him, Levin also told him Gianna's experience in World of Warcraft, from her birth as a princess of the kingdom of Kultiras, to her childhood admiration for the guardian Egwin, from her apprenticeship with Antonidas, to her encounter with Prince Arthas of Lord Aaron, from the sweetness of their love, to Arthas's rebellion that shocked the world, and finally the undead scourge raging in Azeroth. After listening, Gianna naturally showed a shocked expression, but there was also a hint of weirdness in it. Brother Levin, I have to say that your understanding of me is indeed beyond my expectation, as if you have really watched my whole life. I almost feel that you are actually a bronze spy watching me. Dragon, if it's you, you should understand its meaning. The bronze dragon is one of the 5 color dragons in Azeroth, following the parallel time and space of the bronze dragon king, Nozdormu, the guardian of time, and the guardian of Azeroth. This kind of creature will hide in the long river of time, monitoring important nodes in each timeline. Of course Levin could understand what Gianna meant. Gianna suppressed the chaotic emotions in her heart and continued, but I have to point out that there are still some small errors in your description. For example, I have never dated Alsace. Of course, he did pursue me, but at the time I had been obsessed with a book full of the mysterious magic book has no time to care about worldly feelings. Gianna is done with Arthas. What timeline is this? Levin instantly showed the same shocked expression as Gianna just now. But what shocked him even more was what came next. Princess Kultiras continued, of course, although your narrative has some minor errors, it is generally no different from my experience. Therefore, I believe in your otherworld observation ability and what you said. Time travel theory. However, I have my own reasons for traveling to this world. I saw Gianna slowly taking out a beautiful book, it's because of this book. It was because I was obsessed with it that I missed Arthas' pursuit, it was also because I tried to use its power to save the people of Lord Aaron from living in this world outside the group. It seems that whether it is the deviation of the timeline or the other party's time traveling, this book is the culprit. So Levin looked at Gianna and said sincerely, Sister Gianna, can I take a look at this book? Oh, of course. The Princess of Kultiras readily pushed the book to Levin and reminded, actually, it's useless for you to read it, because after coming to this world, this book was resealed, and I can't recite the spell to unseal it, so this book can't be opened. Levin took the book. When he saw the emblem on the cover of the book, Levin's expression suddenly changed. The emblem has an eye pattern in the center, surrounded by 4 stars, and 2 books with reverse directions on each side. This emblem, this pattern that shouldn't appear at this time, why does it appear on the cover of this book? €, please give me flowers. €. He looked up at the blonde woman in front of him, can you tell me what the unblocking spell is? Maybe I can find a way. It's impossible. Brother Levin, I've tried the sun point many times. Gianna chuckled and said, I have tried every password cracking method I can think of, and I have also tried all the puzzles and revealing spells I can find, whether they are from my world or this world, but none of them work. I strongly suspect that this so-called the spell actually has nothing to do with the clues given. Seeing Levin looking at her insistently, Gianna said helplessly, okay, if you must give it a try, I can tell you. The so-called spell is actually the emblem on the cover itself. I see. Levin immediately understood what was going on, but you still need to confirm. 0 By the way, Sister Gianna, how did you get this book? Have you studied its origins since you got this book? How did I get this book? Speaking of this, the Princess of Kultiras put her chin in one hand and fell into memories. I remember that it probably happened when I was 15 years old. In order to reward me for my academic breakthrough, tutor Antonidas took me to the treasure house of the magic city of Dalaran to select a treasure for me. You know, he is the chairman of the Kirin Tor Council, the highest authority in Dalaran, and his position is probably that of Dumbledore and Fudge combined. He has this authority. Then, when I entered the treasure house, this book took the initiative to appear beside me. The mentor said that he didn't know the origin of this book. The mages of Dalaran discovered the magic power contained in it, but because no one could open it, it has been sealed in the treasure house. But I found that I can open it and read it, even if I can only read the part that suits my strength at a time. So, I chose this book as a gift. In fact, I benefited a lot from the secrets this book taught me. Later, I also showed this book to the Prince of the High Elves, Kael'thas. Kale that's told me that most of the materials used to make the cover and pages of this book are specialties from the continent of Kalimdor, and some of the runes in the book are only from ancient Kalim before the earth was shattered. Only the multi-elf empire will use it. The high elves are the descendants of the upper elves in the elf empire who were exiled after the Great Sundering. That's why he could barely recognize all of this. I think this book is probably handed down from the ancient elf empire 10,000 years ago. Ancient Kalimdor, the elven empire, the sky is falling apart. Plus this badge. Levin gradually understood everything. The picture shows the mark of the emblem. Chapter 96. Although there are some speculations about the origin of this mysterious magic book, but Levin didn't tell Gianna. Instead, he tried the emblem on his own intellect. Intellectual destiny. Boshizun. 42. It can't be a machine head, right? Levin recited several nouns in succession, but there was no response from the magic book in front of him. How did that happen? Levin was secretly surprised that it was obviously the symbol of intellect in several fates in a certain turn-based game 30 years later. Could it be? He frowned, tried to change into a void voice, and uttered an inexplicable line in the form of an aria. The heavenly bodies keep secrets and count the roots that connect all things. But it is silent, like the mist at the center of the universe. Listen to the silence and you will know where the stars rest. As soon as he finished speaking, the emblem of knowledge on the cover of the magic book glowed brilliantly. The entire magic book opened instantly, and a powerful magic burst out. It swept around, causing a lot of noise in the room, and then was quickly taken back. Finally, the pages of the book were closed, the light faded, and it lay quietly on the table like an ordinary book. But the overturned chair and the overturned black tea can prove what just happened. How did you open this book? Gian 243 NA was shocked. This is not magic. But Levin knew it was magic. He probably understands why this book has the emblem of intellect on it. Why is the password to unlock the emblem that passage? Because the person who placed this emblem was probably him, strictly speaking, my future self. The reason why he chose the intelligence emblem is because this mark can only be recognized by him as a time traveler in the world. Of course there is a 1 in 10,000 possibility that another person from the Starry Sky Railway world has traveled through the world of Harry Potter. And why is the inexplicable sentence that activates the spell? That's because Quoin has to guard against the 1 in 10,000 possibility. That passage comes from a famous PV of Star Railway, Fables about the Starry Sky, which reveals several major star gods in the background of the world through the Riddler. And that passage is a description of the star god of intellect, Boshizun. At this point, it is obvious why my future self chose this passage as a mantra. He wanted to ensure that he, and only he, could think of this spell immediately after seeing the emblem. Others couldn't think of a spell after seeing the emblem, even if that person came from the world of the Star Railroad. In this case, there are loopholes in keywords such as wisdom, knowledge, and machine brain. But that paragraph is different. That PV uses the NPC's mouth to convey the inside story of the world to players. Even Boshizun himself may not know this passage. Once you guess the secret behind the spell, the meaning of this book becomes clear. That's how your future self transmits information to your present self. The timeline of the Harry Potter world does not support time travel across long periods of time. But the World of Warcraft plane where the Bronze Dragon Legion exists supports going back to the past. My future self probably borrowed this mechanism to go to World of Warcraft and borrowed Jaina's hand to pass this magic book into my hands. Having said that, Levin doesn't dare to tell Gianna the real reason yet. This is also natural. Jaina has said before that this book is also the reason for her time travel. If only Gianna knew now that the person who kicked her from her hometown to a strange world and stayed there for more than 12 years was the future Levin, she was afraid that she would fall out on the spot. You must know that before she traveled through time, her hometown, as well as the entire continent of Lord Aaron, was on the verge of destruction due to the undead natural disaster. Even if there is a chance to return to my hometown in the future, who knows how long it has been since my hometown. What if what she sees then is a completely destroyed hometown, with all her relatives and friends dead and injured? Therefore, until the relationship between the two is close enough, the truth should be slowed down. So Levin replied, I saw this emblem when I was observing another otherworld. It represents a certain deity that symbolizes wisdom, so I came up with this spell. Jaina stared at him, the boy's eyes were full of innocence. Well, every word in that sentence is true. Levin wasn't lying to her, he just selectively revealed the facts. The princess of Kul Tiras nodded, is it a god that symbolizes wisdom? That's right, I understand. Maybe this book is really related to Otherworld, which can also explain the spells in this book. Be different. What makes it so different? Levin asked curiously, I would like to hear the details. Jaina smiled slightly, since you want to know, why don't you open the book and take a look? Is it really possible? Knowing that this book was probably created by his future self, Levin still asked politely, this is your magic book. For wizards and mages, knowledge is power, so it is normal for spellcasters to be reluctant to share their unique spells. But Gianna is very open-minded, I was able to own this book because it chose me. Now that you can recite the incantation to open it, it means that you are also destined to it. In this case, of course you have the right to consult it at will. Then I won't be polite. So Levin sat upright and turned the pages of the book solemnly. You opened the Book of Knowledge and obtained a large amount of magic inheritance. Your understanding of magic has deepened, and your wizard level +2 you have learned the new spell counterattack, wandering step, and any door you have obtained demi-plane seed because you have learned spell counterattack and have some understanding of spell defense, you have gained the Expertise Protection School Specialization, and you have gained the Metamagic Expertise Spell Upgrade Spell Countermeasure, 3-level protection system. If you try to interrupt a creature that is casting a spell, you need to have a basic understanding of the opponent's spell. If the opponent casts a high-level spell, the counterattack may fail. Mystifying Step, Level 2 Conjuration System, you are surrounded by fleeting silver mist and teleport to an idle space that you can see any door. 4th level Conjuration System, you can bring up to one companion and teleport yourself from your current location to any accurately described location. The place can be something you see, imagine, or describe through distance and direction. Spell Upgrade, a spellcaster can cast a certain spell at a higher level cost. This spell is considered a high-level spell. Spells can have additional effects after being upgraded. Demi-plane Seed, a legendary rare object. After deploying it, the demi-plane seed will immediately expand and convert a 1 km radius space into a demi-plane under the control of the owner. The size of the demi-plane it will gradually grow over time. That's it. This was Levin's first reaction after feeling the harvest. The Book of Knowledge is indeed a treasure created by my future self. After opening it, Levin's harvest is not unfruitful. The level alone has been upgraded by 2 levels, and a LV9 wizard can access 5th level spells without the need for enlightenment. In addition, the several spells harvested are also first-rate and practical. Counterspell is most suitable for research wizards like Levin who have extensive knowledge. The more a spellcaster understands the nature of a spell, the more powerful it can be. Being unable to release key spells is a very painful experience for any spellcaster. Combined with spell upgrading skills, it is the nemesis of any spellcaster. As for Lost Step and Any Door, they are also very practical space spells. Tracing Step can not only be cast instantly, but can also be placed anywhere on the battlefield, completely crushing the most popular short-range space spell Flash among mages in World of Warcraft. The movement of Flash is limited to plane coordinates, and it can only control the approximate teleportation distance, but cannot control the landing point. The only advantage is that it can be cast instantly. And Any Door is completely replaced by Apparition. Apparition can only move to places you have visited, and the risk of casting the spell is relatively high. Any Door is not only safer, but the transmission method can also be freely selected. It is really a must-have choice for home travel. As for the demi-plane seed, it is a treasure that Levin cannot even imagine at this stage. Owning a demi-plane means getting a base that can never be discovered by outsiders, a world that is your own. But the spells that can create a demi-plane are all high-level spells. A mage must reach level 8 to create a temporary demi-plane passage, and level 9 to create a demi-plane. But only the legendary mage can truly create a stable demi-plane that can last forever. And now, the treasure that this legendary mage can create is in his hands. Levin has already figured out how to use this demi-plane seed after returning home. He directly converted the tower and the nearby space into his own demi-plane. Normally just leave it where it is. Once it encounters a threat, it can be hidden in the demi-plane, and the protective effect is far greater than that of the Red Heart loyalty spell. In addition, Levin can also rely on the demi-plane to perform the mansion technique. This spell allows the mage to return to his mansion for supplies at any time even when exploring in the wild, turning a difficult adventure into an outing in the park below your home. But this mansion cannot be created out of thin air. The caster needs to build his own mansion in a demi-plane. In short, for Levin, a demi-plane and a portable space are basically the same. Overall 1.7, Levin who gained the Book of Knowledge can be called a wave of fat. But he still wasn't satisfied. Because this book lacks the most critical information from the future. Before opening the book, Levin thought he would receive a message from the future. If you just give some benefits to your past self, your future self will never cause such trouble. Because with your own potential, even if you don't have these benefits, as long as you continue to develop step by step, you will have everything you should have. So, this book was passed down not to leave a message, but to trigger some special effect at a critical moment. Levin secretly speculates on his future thoughts. Unfortunately, there is never any reasonable guess. The same person has almost the same intelligence, and his future self has an information advantage, so it is normal for him to be unable to guess. But this feeling of being kept in the dark and kept in a fog is particularly uncomfortable. Can the Riddler die? Finally Levin sighed. Oh. It turns out that the Riddler is myself, that's okay. Chapter 97. After reading the Book of Knowledge, Levin chatted happily with Gina for several hours before they separated. After being far away from home and staying alone in Otherworld for 12 full years, even a sane mage like Gina still misses Azeroth. And Levin just became the person she confided in, even though he was not a native of Azeroth. His past life experience made him know Azeroth well, and there were many secrets that even Anna herself could not understand. After talking like this, in Gianna's eyes, Levin is simply more indigenous than indigenous. It gave her a feeling of meeting an old friend in a foreign land out of thin air. Before saying goodbye, the two exchanged addresses and made an appointment to visit each other. During this process, Levin did not talk to her about his ambitions or his big plan to subvert the magical world and build a floating city. It's not that I don't want to, but it's not necessary. In this regard, Joanna and Zilly are completely different people. Although everyone is a spellcaster and has the identity of a princess, their way of thinking is completely different. Ciri has no consciousness of being a spellcaster at all. As the princess of Sintra, she had to seek refuge with her adoptive father, White Wolf, due to the collapse of her country and family very early on. In this way, she was even more affected by the demon hunters, and she tended to prefer one person to another in life. The Witcher is an emotional ranger. Gina has been a real princess since she was a child. She has received all the aristocratic education and the standard mage education. It can be said that she is a real mage. She is more mature, rational, and more realistic. At least this is the case for Siri. Faced with such a person, Levin does not need to draw a big pie. The ability Levin showed today was enough for the Princess of Kultiras to see the necessity of making friends and cooperating with him. Without him having to say it verbally, Jaina herself would understand that if she wanted to return to Azeroth, the only person most likely to provide help was Levin Green. After bidding farewell to Jaina, Levin did not stay long and left the Ministry of Magic very early. The three of them played at Tonk's house for 2 days and then reached the tower through Levin's 5-ring arbitrary door. According to the previous plan, Levin placed the demi-plane seed in the tower and successfully transformed the tower and surrounding areas into a demi-plane. And bound it with mansion technique. From now on, no matter where he is, Ye Wen can return to his retainer at any time. After the award ceremony, the three of them lived a peaceful life again. Hermione is now basically qualified in broomstick skills and no longer needs to take practice classes. So Miss Know-It-All devoted all her free time to studying, and her diligent attitude made Siri feel ashamed. As for Levin, he began to study his wild transformation carefully. Levin's anatomical research results on chimeras are well reflected in today's chimera transformation. If the chimera beast chooses the negative symbols of 3 chimeric materials, then what Levin obtains are the positive symbols of the 4 animals corresponding to the 4 major colleges. This makes the chimera he transformed into not only not evil, but also giving people a majestic and righteous feeling. In the chimera state, Levin's attributes become strength, 21, agility, 17, constitution, 22, intelligence, 16, perception, 14, charisma, 10 and has super magic resistance, recovery ability and breath ability. Since the 4 chimeric creatures correspond to the 4 major colleges of Hogwarts, the 4 chimeric creatures show the power of the 4 elements. Levin also mastered the 4 breaths, the fire breath corresponding to the lion, fire, the electric breath corresponding to the eagle, the acid breath corresponding to the badger, water, and the frost breath corresponding to the snake, water. Of course, the 4 animals also give him various conventional abilities. The lion's roar can give courage to friendly troops and intimidate enemies, the wings of an eagle can soar high and create strong winds, the badger's claws can dig into the soil and move underground, the snake gave him infrared vision and venomous canines. All in all, after the transformation, Levin's close combat and hand-to-hand combat capabilities have been greatly improved. However, he has lost most of his spell casting ability and can only use a small number of simple spells and druid spells that rely on the body. Only psychic abilities are fully preserved. Later, Levin tried the ability he learned during Chimera's transformation to adjust the proportion of chimeric LU factors. As the factor ratio is adjusted, Levin can control the degree to which the chimera transforms into the 4 beasts. For example, if the eagle's factor ratio is completely adjusted to 0%, the chimera will lose its wings, as well as the attributes, abilities, and breath related to the eagle. However, the initial form of chimera means the most perfect ratio, and arbitrary adjustments will only make it weaker. But this ability is not useless, at least it has one benefit, that is, it gives Levin 4 more wild forms of ordinary beasts. That is, adjusting a single chimera factor to 100% and all other factors to 0%. Lion form, strength, 21, agility, 17, constitution, 22, intelligence, 16, perception, 14, charisma, 6 abilities, advanced magic resistance, rapid healing, fire breath, lion's roar eagle form, strength, 18, agility, 17, constitution, 22, intelligence, 16, perception, 14, charisma, 10 abilities, advanced magic resistance, rapid healing, lightning breath, flying, badger form, strength, 14, agility, 17, constitution, 22, intelligence, 16, perception, 14, charisma, 10 abilities, advanced magic resistance, rapid healing, acid breath, dig, wounded ferociousness snake form, strength, 17, agility, 17, constitution, 22, intelligence, 16, perception, 14, charisma, 2 abilities, advanced magic resistance, rapid healing, ice breath, infrared vision, poison, constriction. In these forms, Levin can act like a normal beast without being as conspicuous as his chimera form. He can even go to the Ministry of Magic to declare animagus separately. Of course, Chan wouldn't really do that. In short, 760 chimera was indeed his right choice as his first wild transformation. At the same time, Levin could also feel that if he wanted to perform the second wilderness ritual, he would have to wait for at least 3 months. Otherwise, if you continuously obtain new wild transformation, your body will not be able to hold on and will collapse. This is because he has reached 14 points of physical fitness. If it were replaced with the original constitution, this interval might be extended to half a year or even a year. After studying the wild form, Levin occasionally wandered around the village of St. Catchpole in the wild form. Or dig around in badger form, or swim like a snake, but what he likes most is turning into a giant eagle and circling in the sky. However, that night, Levin was preparing to go out for a flight as usual. Hermione just wanted to relax after studying for a day, so Levin planned to take her on a flight this time. While the two were soaring above the clouds, enjoying the cool night breeze, they suddenly saw a strange scene. A flying green car rushed out of the clouds and flew towards us. In this unobstructed sky, both sides saw each other, then. The people on the back of the giant eagle and the people in the car, a total of 5 Gryffindors, completed a dramatic encounter at an altitude of more than 2,000 meters. Good evening, Harry, Ronald, and George and Weasley. Good evening, Hermione. Why are you, here? Chapter 98. So, this giant eagle is Levin's animagus transformation, and you two are out for a walk. And you actually drove this Ford Anglia to Uncle Harry's house and forcibly picked him up. In the sky at this time, giant eagles and cars were flying side by side. Hermione and the 4 people in the car finally figured out why the other party was here. You two actually took a walk in the sky at night. This is so cool. George and Fred looked at each other and praised in unison. George even whistled, making Hermione blush with embarrassment. This is none of your business. In order to cover up her shyness, Hermione said angrily, how could you do such a thing? Aren't you afraid of being discovered by ordinary people? Ronald, I remember that your father himself works in the department for the prohibition of the misuse of Muggle items. But if we don't go, Harry will have to spend the summer in the attic and won't even be able to go to school. Ronald defended loudly, his tone full of anger. There was an elf trying to stop me from going to school, Harry also said aggrievedly, he even used magic in my house. As a result, I was warned by the Ministry of Magic. If he does it again, I will be expelled. But you can definitely write to Professor Dumbledore, or Hagrid, they will be happy to help Harry, instead of taking risks in his father's car without permission. Hermione pointed out sharply. But she immediately received a retort from Ronald, but, aren't you also doing dangerous things? I guess Levin's animagus transformation was not registered, right? Hermione was left speechless, she didn't realize that, although she always followed the rules subconsciously, under the influence of Levin and other friends, she was almost becoming a rule breaker herself. After all, most of Levin's daily behaviors are quite dangerous for young wizards and even adult wizards. For example, researching unfamiliar potions, researching new magic, transforming into animagus without authorization, using space extension spells privately, learning apparition privately, actually any door, hunting XXXXX level dangerous magical beasts, etc. She was almost desensitized to many deviant behaviors. Seeing that he had convinced Hermione, Ronald felt proud. But Harry Potter discovered something was wrong. Speaking of which, why are you taking a walk here? Shouldn't you be staying at home? That's because I was a guest at Levin's house, which is in the village of St. Catchpole. Hermione replied enthusiastically. Levin also lives in the village of St. Catchpole. Ronald was surprised, and George and Fred also looked over. Of course. Hermione was a little confused, is it possible that you also live in St. Catchpole village? Of course we live in the village of St. Catchpole. The 3 Weasleys looked at each other and said in unison. Well, after doing this for a long time, we are all neighbors. Not only could he live in the Weasley family, but he also became neighbors with 2 friends, Levin and Hermione. Thinking of this, Harry looked forward to the next summer vacation even more. Later, Ronald told Hermione that the Weasley family's ancestors lived in the village of St. Catchpole. Hermione revealed that Levin just moved here during this holiday season. It turns out that our new neighbor is Levin. Brother Weasley said in surprise, the new neighbor has been mysterious since he started construction work. Everyone was guessing his identity before. Ronald guessed it was a very old witch. The giant eagle gave Ronald a sharp look. I didn't. Ronald immediately defended loudly. He didn't want to be targeted by Levin. So, how did Levin move here? Harry asked enviously. He knew Levin's origins, but how could he own his own house here? Harry wanted to leave Uncle Vernon's house so badly. He bought the place, Hermione answered. But, how much does it cost? Harry couldn't help but ask. But before Hermione could say anything, the Weasley brothers gave him an explanation. You don't know yet, but Levin won the Order of Merlin, first class. George said loudly, the reason is that he killed a chimera and saved the Muggles. Of course, this happened after buying the house, Fred added, but it is enough to prove that Levin has the ability to make money. You are truly a genius. Ronald accepted the fact with some helplessness. Not only did his peers own their own houses, they also received the Merlin medal. So, you are living together, right? George said in a joking tone, a man and a woman alone, no wonder you come for a walk in the sky at night. We do not have. Hermione became angry again, and in order to defend herself, she couldn't help but reveal more important news, we are not alone, and senior sister Shirley is also here. So there are 3 of us. Fred whistled again, you guys are really having fun. By this time, they had arrived near Weasley's house. The car landed on the ground, the 4 people got out of the car one after another, and Levin also changed back to his human form. Remember Lisa, Fred? Levin looked at one of the twins and smiled maliciously. That Muggle girl in the paper shop, what happened to her? Fred suddenly felt a little shuddering. I saw you 2 having a lot of fun with her 2 days ago. Levin showed a dangerous smile, what would happen if Angelina heard about this? Angelina Johnson, like the Weasley brothers, is a player on the Gryffindor Quidditch team. Angelina? What's wrong? Do she and Lisa know each other? George asked. Levin ignored him and looked directly at Fred, if I hear rumors about living together at Hogwarts after school starts, all this will happen, understand? Clear. Fred nodded pitifully. This confused George. He was obviously a very smart person, but at this time he became dull, and he actually didn't realize that Fred liked Angelina for a long time. Poor George, he probably still can't believe it, Fred, whom he loved most, secretly fell in love with another woman behind his back. Fred obviously didn't want George to know about this, so he took the initiative to end the topic. It's still early, we have to go back to the dragon quickly. He arranged, we have to go upstairs quietly and give Mom a surprise in the morning. Then he turned to Levin, remember to come to the burrow tomorrow and call senior sister Siri. We will hold a grand welcome party for Harry. Of course, I wish you good luck. Levin waved to him, but I do think Mrs. Weasley will give you a surprise. At least in the original book, they were caught by Mrs. Weasley after picking up Harry. After watching the four of them tiptoe home, Levin and Hermione also walked towards the tower. After walking a few steps, a woman's roar came from behind, do you know how anxious I am? The bed is empty. No note left. The car is gone too. Thinking of the way they lowered their heads and were scolded, the two of them laughed involuntarily. Chapter 99. The next week was considered the happiest day in Harry's mind. Life in the magical world made him novel. Everyone in the Weasley family liked him very much. He could live with his best friend every day, and his other two good friends were his neighbors. He even hoped to live like this for the rest of his life. Never go back to the Dursleys again. As for Levin, Harry's arrival did not bring many changes to his life. During this time, he became obsessed with space magic. After learning Wandering Step and Any Door, Levin's understanding of conjuration spells became deeper and deeper. The more he studied, the more interested he became in the mysteries of space. The existence of demi-plane seed has also added a lot of convenience to his understanding and practice of space power. Today, Levin is studying the space expansion spell, and he is committed to casting this spell for every room in the tower. Obviously this is a good thing, but you have to know that in the Muggle world, how many people are trying to make their houses extra square meters. Nowadays, with just a wave of your hand, the area listed on your real estate certificate can be expanded tenfold. There is such a good thing in the world. But it happened that Hermione and Siri were quite crazy about this. Both girls had to grapple with the problem of how to fill a room that was 10 times the size of theirs. By the way, after Levin learned Any Door, Hermione finally no longer had to stay at Levin's house all day long. Now Levin would pick up Hermione from her house every morning and take her back to his home in the evening. Occasionally, on a whim, Hermione would stay in the tower overnight. Since then, the Grangers have looked at Levin much more kindly. At least Mr. Granger wouldn't be staring at him like he was the brat who kidnapped his daughter. And after the week passed, one fine morning, Levin received a letter from Hogwarts School. It was an envelope of yellow parchment with green writing on it. The letter listed a list of new books he would use this year. Sophomores will read, Standard Spells, Level 2 by Miranda Gorshak, Breaking with the Female Ghost, by Joe DeLoyle Lockhart, Walking with Ghouls by Gilderoy Lockhart, Holidays with a Dominatrix by Gilderoy Lockhart, Walking with Trolls by Gilderoy Lockhart, A Voyage with a Vampire by Gilderoy Lockhart, Wandering with Werewolves, by Gilderoy Lockhart, A Year with XZ Snowman, Gilderoy Lockhart. It seems that Dumbledore helped Lockhart sell books in exchange for Lockhart's defense against the Dark Arts professorship this year. Hermione and Siri also received the same letter. Siri's 5th grade textbook had different textbooks on other subjects, but there was also a long list of Lockhart's works. This is too confusing. With Levin's financial strength, just a few books are nothing. But some families are different. For example, the Weasley family, their family has 5 children going to school this year. This means they have to buy 5 sets of Lockhart's books, for a total of 35 copies. According to the market price, these 7 books are close to more than 20 galleons. 5 sets of books are 100 galleons. This is undoubtedly adding insult to injury for the Weasley family, who are not already wealthy. The Weasleys probably turned green. The new Dark Arts professor. I wonder if this year's one is reliable. Hermione looked melancholy after reading it. Professor Quirrell's performance last semester made her despair of this course. Fortunately, Levin is tutoring her this summer. This gave her a certain degree of dark magic defense ability. Compared to those of her peers who were tricked along with her, her strength was already much higher. I seem to remember this person's name. He seems to have received a 3rd-class medal of the Order of Merlin. Shirley said as she rummaged through a pile of newspapers. Ah, I found it. I hope this article will be published. The cub of Sintra picked up an article of the Daily Prophet and read it aloud, in recognition of his brave behavior in facing the creatures of darkness, and for introducing methods of resistance in his autobiography. Hermione hummed and asked again, the Order of Merlin, Level 3, is it very powerful? Should it be okay? Levin was unsure. The girl raised her head, looked at the 2 people beside her, and chuckled, you two, one is a 1st-class medal winner and the youngest Merlin medal winner. The other has won a 2nd-level medal. Compared with you, he's not that powerful. Different from the original work, Hermione now hangs out with Levin every day, which is something she has seen before. At the award ceremony, the scene of Levin chatting and laughing with celebrities in the wizarding world is still vivid in my mind. She was used to meeting truly awesome people, and although people like Lockhart were worthy of admiration, they could no longer arouse her admiration. However, Zilly had some different opinions. I have read his book at Mrs. Tonks's. At least his method of solving monsters is quite professional. Putting aside the behavior of selling books, this man does have some real talents. Each of Lockhart's writings describes his experience of dealing with a dark creature, female ghosts, ghouls, hags, trolls, vampires, werewolves, yetis. In the world of The Witcher 3, these things are completely the job of the demon hunter. Siri was raised by a demon hunter again. After coming to the world of Harry Potter, she also acted as a witcher to earn galleons. Therefore, Siri almost regarded Lockhart as half a peer. You're right. Levin nodded, but I advise you not to have any expectations. Why is this? Shurik said that she had always believed Levin's words. You'll know when you see him with your own eyes. He thought for a moment and added, it just so happened that this guy had written before and invited me to attend his book launch in Diagon Alley. Although I refused, I also learned that the launch would be next week. We just picked that day to go to Diagon Alley to buy new books for next semester, just so you can see what kind of person Lockhart is. Next Wednesday will arrive in a blink of an eye. Levin used 5 rings. Any door to take the 2 of them to Diagon Alley early in the morning. Never let the Fluo Bang company that produces Fluo powder make an extra penny. Well, the main thing is that the teleportation effect through any door is more comfortable. From a physical point of view, it is almost the same as walking through an ordinary door. Unlike Fluo powder, which has to go through the fireplace, not only does it make the world spin, but it can also easily become smoky. Fluo powder itself is not expensive. It was originally invented by Ignatia Wildsmith, a witch born in Ravenclaw. After her death, Fluo fans were returned to the state and were controlled by official agencies. Currently, there is only one licensed manufacturer, Fluo Bang Company, in the Yin Kingdom. It is illegal for anyone else to sell them. However, this kind of monopoly behavior is not for huge profits, but for the convenience of the people. Because for more than 100 years, the price of Fluo powder has never changed, it has always been 2 sickles per spoon. In Muggle society, this is equivalent to cheap subways, buses, and green trains. Such cheap charges make the Fluo network the most developed public transportation facility in Yin, which can be regarded as a rare virtue in magic. In Diagon Alley, the 3 Levins happened to run into the Weasley family. The family had red hair together and stood out among the crowd. The Weasleys were going to Gringotts to get money, and Ronald stayed to chat with them. Ronald asked Levin curiously, don't you have to go to Gringotts to withdraw money? Levin shook his head, I can't trust those goblins. I would rather keep the money in my own home, which is much safer than Gringotts. Not to mention the goblin Gringotts, he couldn't even trust village banks. My money is with Levin. Zilly said calmly. I don't need to go to Gringotts to exchange for galleons. Levin directly uses galleons to buy pounds from my father. Hermione looked at Levin with grateful eyes, and she knew very well that Levin suffered a loss. You guys have such a good relationship, Ronald said dryly, with a look of disgust on his face. I guess our family won't need to save money for a long time in the future. Even though he had never met him, he was already full of disgust for Lockhart. That's a lot of galleons. Levin thought for a while and said to him, if you really don't want to spend the money, I have an idea. Although there is an anti-copying curse on ordinary books, the anti-copying curse cannot be copied directly with a pen. I created a little spell called Scribe Curse. Ronald's eyes suddenly lit up when he heard this, and he couldn't help but look at Levin with a much kinder look. Levin. But, this is piracy. Hermione said weakly, isn't there something wrong with doing this? Perhaps seeing him in person can dispel your thoughts. Levin suggested, we can go to Flourish and Blott's bookstore first and see it with our own eyes before we make a decision. Chapter 100. Not long after, they waited for Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, as well as Harry Potter, who had returned from Gringotts. This unlucky guy made a mistake when using the Fluo network for the first time and ran into Nocturne Alley. Fortunately, he was taken out by Hagrid who was passing by. Several people went straight to Flourish and Blott's bookstore. There were a lot of people in the bookstore, but they were all queuing up outside the store. Today is Lockhart's book launch, and they are all here to sign autographs. Most of the crowd were witches of Mrs. Weasley's age, and it was no exaggeration for Lockhart to be called the Master's Killer. But this creates trouble for them when buying books. If they want to buy the textbooks for next semester, they have to overcome obstacles and break through the siege. Just when the Weasleys were puffing up their chests, breathing out loud, and preparing to fight to the death, Levin took action. He called a clerk out directly. Oh, it's the distinguished member Mr. Green. As soon as he saw Levin, the clerk showed a respectful expression. How can I help you? After the tower was built, Levin purchased a large number of books from Flourish and Blott's to fill the tower's library. After all, Levin's memory library can only be used by himself, and he is not the only one who lives in the tower. For most authors who are not idiots like Lockhart, Levin is still happy to respect their intellectual property rights and will not use transcription techniques to deal with them, so he chooses to buy physical books directly. If he really can't buy them, he will transcribe yourself. That order is almost equivalent to Flourish and Blott's entire month's sales. Therefore, Levin became a senior member of the bookstore and the most distinguished guest. The bookstore door is blocked. Levin pointed to the crowd in front of him, is there any other way to get in? Of course, how can we let a distinguished guest like you line up? The clerk immediately showed them the way. Please and your friends come with me. So, everyone easily entered Flourish and Blott's bookstore through the back door. At Flourish and Blott's, they meet the topic of conversation, Gilderoy Lockhart. He sat behind the desk, surrounded by large photos of himself, the faces in the photos all winking at the crowd, flashing dazzling white teeth. The real Lockhart wears a robe as blue as the forget-me-not flower, which matches his blue eyes. The pointed wizard hat is playfully tilted on his hair. A short man held a large black camera, jumping back and forth to take pictures, while Lockhart posed in various poses. Every time the flash flashed blindingly, streams of purple smoke spewed out of the camera. In the process, Tuhart's qualities reached Levin's direction. Levin immediately jumped behind Shirley, using her 170 centimeters height to block his underdeveloped figure. Turn your head around too, Siri. Levin leaned behind her and reminded in a dull voice, Don't let him recognize you. He knows very well that Lockhart is well versed in the ways of modern internet celebrities. What he likes most is to gain popularity. As for myself and Zilly, one is a first-level medal and the other is a second-level medal, both of which are higher than Lockhart's level. Naturally, they are the best candidates to gain popularity. Although she didn't understand what was going on, Siri obediently followed Levin's advice. So the only unlucky one is Harry. Ahahaha, Harry is here. Isn't this Harry Potter? Lockhart rushed forward, grabbed Harry's arm, and pulled him to the signing table. Levin could understand the resentful look in Harry's eyes when he looked at him before he was dragged away. You clearly knew he was like this, why didn't you remind me? Sorry, Harry. Levin apologized secretly in his heart, only by sacrificing you can people see his true face. In front of the signing table, Lockhart announced loudly in his grandiose voice, when young Harry walked into Flourish and Blott's bookstore today, he just wanted to buy my autobiography Magical Me. But he didn't know that in a short while, he would get something more valuable than this. Lockhart said as he grabbed Harry's wrist and waved around. That gesture made Levin feel like he might burst out at any time. Brothers, look at me, look at me, look at me, I'm going to announce something. In fact, he and his classmates are going to get a real, magical version of me. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, I couldn't be more happy and proud to announce that this September, I will be a wizard at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Defense against the Dark Arts Professor. Then, a large stack of Lockhart's autographed books fell into Harry's hands, and he had to take more photos with Lockhart holding the complete set of autographed books. Even Hermione could clearly see this naked act of rubbing against each other. I didn't expect him to be this kind of person. Miss Granger's face was full of disappointment, and the value of the third-class medal had decreased in her mind. Zilly also frowned frequently, compared with his current performance and the one in the book, he is completely two different people. If you cheated this kind of person, you wouldn't feel any guilt at all. So the plan to use Scribe instead of buying books was finalized on the spot. The Weasley twins expressed their excitement to participate, as long as it saves money for the family. Percy Weasley and his younger sister Ginny Weasley can accept it. **ANTTA €. As for how to deal with the Weasleys' doubts, Hermione thought of a good way. Just to shirk Levin, he said that he had purchased a batch of local goods internally by virtue of his status as a member of Flourish and Blott's bookstore. As for who to copy from, Harry just got a set of signed books. This set of books was given personally by Lockhart. In other words, there were 9 of them in the group, and they didn't even buy a set of paid books, so they had a perfect free prostitution. Just as everyone was having a great discussion, there was another commotion in the bookstore. It turned out that Mr. Weasley and Lucius Malfoy were having a fight in the bookstore. The scene was really hot-blooded and exciting. The bookstore clerk and Mrs. Weasley were still anxiously trying to stop the fight. Stop. Don't fight. Don't fight anymore. You can't kill someone without a wand. But obviously, someone has different ideas. For example, the Weasley twins are cheering their father on. Hit him. Dad, beat him hard. Kick him in the crotch. Kick him in the crotch. Oh, you two, shut up. Molly pressed her 2 sons with a headache on her face. But in fact, there are people who enjoy the fun more than they do and don't mind it too much. Levin secretly stretched out his hand to Mr. Weasley. A powerful force of nature emerged. In full view of many wizards, it is better to use druid spells that do not consume magic power to be more concealed. Wild power. Wild power, level 2, making the subject's strength, agility, and body circumference +2 respectively. Assuming that the average attribute value of normal humans is 10, then the normal physiological limit of humans is 18. In this case, the strength, agility, and constitution +2 respectively almost made Mr. Weasley, who was originally an ordinary person, suddenly have the physical fitness of a fighter. In an instant, Mr. Weasley suddenly felt that his skills were much more agile, and his strength was even more vigorous. The left hook that could have hit his face was dodged by him. Then he subconsciously punched the opponent in the chest. Bang! Poor Lucius was knocked back a full 4 meters by this heavy blow, and hit a bookshelf directly. He was dizzy from the impact and completely lost his ability to resist. The clerk and Mrs. Weasley took the opportunity to step forward and separate the two completely. Ah, this! Mr. Weasley looked at his fist suspiciously. Am I that powerful? He tentatively pumped his fist again, but it no longer felt like before. The instigator, Levin, had already cancelled the spell and hid his power and fame. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.